Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. We do have a couple of folks online. Chris Medina and Trey, you guys can hear us? Good to go? Good deal. Trey can hear us. Chris, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Trey, can you go ahead and just check your audio as well?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Perfect. As long as you can hear us, it's probably better if you don't actually see us, at least some of us. So thanks for being with us. I hear your roads are a little bit crazy this morning, so thanks for being online with us. At this time, I'm going to, before I get us going too far, I'm going to ask Sandra if she could do a roll call, please.
Okay, Chris Knoll.
Present.
Mike Joblins not here. Colleen Ford. Sean Terry. Here. Mike Grable. Here. Joe Roskin. Here. Yeah. Trey. Online. Mike. Here. Reed Dowdy. Here. Greg Hawkins. Here. Levi Kramer. Here. Paul Jefferson. Here. Aaron Bravo. Here. Josh Villalpando. Here. And Tracy Cormany. Here.
At this time, I'd also like to just start sort of this way. If you were not a part of our roll call, just a quick introduction. So, perfect.
Greg Critchett, Assistant Athletic Director, Cherry Creek School District.
Jake Novotny, Football President for Chaska and Head Football Coach at Fountain Fort Carson High School.
Just before we get too deep into the agenda, I wanted to say welcome and thank you. For those that have been around, you know the committee work that CHSAA does is where the real meat and potatoes of what we do happens. It is through honest and open and frank conversations. And I want to say congratulations on being on the committee that everyone hates the most. It seems like football is always stirring the pot or has issues or trying to figure out solutions to problems that many times it does not appear that solutions are there. So I look forward to our work today. Really look forward to our work today. We do have some things that we need to discuss and brainstorm and figure out. And so before we get too far, though, I do want to make sure that I recognize some of our new committee members. Mike Hughes from Lakewood is with us, so thank you. And Mike and Tracy Cormany, Principal at Pine Creek, Athletic Director at Lakewood, are our new 5A reps. So welcome to those folks. Reed Dowdy and Levi Kramer are new 1A reps, so welcome to you. Aaron Bravo and Greg Hawkins representing our 3A. Thanks for being here. And then Josh Villalpando with 8-man. From Walsenburg, not to be confused with John Mall. I learned something today. Yep. So, Paul Jefferson. Yes, and then Paul Jefferson, you're our 4A. Thanks for being here and for your added input and be a productive day.
We have one more guest. Can you check Matt Miller's audio?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you, sir? Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you guys just fine. How's everybody doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for being here, sir. And Matt is with the Colorado Football Officials Association. So at this point in time, on your agenda, we have a welcome from Commissioner Kruger. Unfortunately, Commissioner Kruger is not going to be with us this morning. And so I'm going to jump in, Mr. Miller, with an update from the Colorado Football Officials Association. Actually, before you do that, for those in attendance, right outside these doors, if you're not familiar with the CHSAA office or the restrooms, we do have a break, maybe 2 built into our agenda if need be. But if you need restroom facilities to take a call, whatever else it might be, feel free just to step out right outside those doors, and it's out there on the right. Mr. Miller, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So an update for this season. There were some struggles that we're working through, still coach communication we're working through. The playoffs went well, I thought. I watched all the video. Of course, there's going to be missed stuff. That's just the nature of the beast. Some things to look forward to. I really like and I appreciate everyone allowing us to work 7-man in all 5A playoff games. I think that's beneficial to the teams and helpful to us. We're getting more guys on playoff games and hopefully making the game better and not having any made up calls that we think we see, but we don't see just because we have 2 more sets of eyes on the field. And I would like to hopefully someday move forward and have all of the 4A games also covered with 7-man. Other than that, everything's good. We're getting more officials in. Hopefully we won't have to be moving games to other nights of the week and Saturdays. Other than that, if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Thank you for
Is there
that.
anything specific you guys want to have questions about?
Committee members, questions, concerns? Mr. Miller and the Football Officials Association. Good? For the first time as an official, you're not being questioned, sir.
That's always a plus.
That is a good thing. All right, thanks for being with us and thanks for your work. We appreciate it more than you know, so thank you to you and the Officials Association. Here with the Colorado High School Coaches Association, Coach Novotny, can you give us an update and just what's going on in your world?
Yep, not much here, just a couple things. All state teams were selected last week, and they're reaching out to the kids right now and to the coaches for the teams. Awards wise, we are making sure that we are putting emphasis on our awards this year. The Lesser Award and Coach of the Year will be announced here in a few weeks. Since COVID, those have been kind of by the wayside or just not something that we've done consistently. And then just 2 kind of things here brought up by a couple of our members. A handful of 1A or 2A coaches have reached out for me to just pose the question on what the process is, or some of them looking at going to a 9 to 10 game schedule. And just, I think, it's more just a question what that process is and reviewing that. And then also several of the 4A, 5A coaches have reached out and just expressed a concern in the state of lower level games, and scheduling has been a concern, as you guys know, almost a week to week, even a day to day thing during the season. So kind of the main items that I had, that was really the main things, and just that's about it.
And I can address probably both of those topics right now. In terms of moving from a 9th to a 10th game, our bylaws right now indicate regular season. So if this is something that a league board would do to a bylaw, my suggestion would be anytime you do a bylaw proposal, you have multiple leagues that are in support. So again, I would reach out to as many 1A, 2A, whoever's interested in that, just to see if it's a local interest or is it a statewide interest before it's presented to our committee and then legislative council. So the second thing would be the lower level scheduling, and that's a tricky one. I have been asked last year just about creating a spreadsheet. I don't know if that's necessary, simply because we have the games wanted link on our website. I think we just need to make sure that everybody's using that one place. There are times when ADs will do a blast to all ADs about lower level games, and I know when I was an AD at times I would just delete those. It didn't give it a whole lot of look. So I think if we could get coaches and ADs in the habit of using that games wanted, that would be the singular place that everyone can look. In terms of fixing the issue, I don't know if that's going to happen. It's year to year with some schools. Kids that have covered.
Thank you, sir. On our agenda, we do have a update from the SMAC, but we will come back to that a little bit later. So I want us to jump into the clock appeals discussion. I think the one question that I field more than any other question as the football chairperson is, well, how did you guys classify us in that classification? And quite frankly, I'm not sure that that's just a football conversation anymore. I think for a long time it was dominated by football, but I think it is across the board now that folks want to know how they got into the classification and those kind of things. And so we've asked Sully if he can take us through that process. We do have some schools out there that will be making some appeals. And so at the end of our conversation, what I want John to be able to walk out of this room and be able to say is, the football committee is in support or not in support. It's not us making a vote. It's not our decision. We are gaining input. John is gaining input from the football committee. Does that make sense? So if you will take us through that process, sir.
Sure. Right now, CHSAA is in the process. We have a a subcommittee looking at clock and the overall process with clock. I don't want to get too in depth with that, but what we are going to be talking about today are some specific appeals. Typically, appeals occur after the cutoffs come out, which would have been last year. So there is a process, and our bylaws basically state this. In February of even years, the CHSAA staff may present sport and activity adjustments to the clock committee for consideration of approval based on bylaw 1500.21 in extraordinary circumstances. The CHSAA staff may consult the activity committee, which is you all, in making the adjustment prior to presenting to clock. So essentially what we're going to do, we have some schools that have an appeal here in the even year that would like to present to clock to see if they could change classifications. So I'm going to go through each one individually and give you the information that was presented to me, and then we can discuss each one individually from there. Okay. All right. First one. First one on my list, and this is just the order that I received them, is Middle Park. So Middle Park currently is currently a 1A school, but they, based on their enrollment of 397, which was reported last year, was classified as a 2A in the Western League. So the information I received from Middle Park, in the last 3 years, we've experienced finishing the season with the numbers in the mid to low 20s. We anticipate the same or smaller numbers next year. During that time, we've had our records of 3-6, 5-4, and this year 4-5. Quite frankly, we still have not recovered from the COVID season. To rebuild the program, we would need the players to experience some success. We do not feel that will be possible if forced to move to 2A. We would request to be allowed to remain in 1A for one additional cycle. So I want to just reiterate a couple things on here. These schools did have the opportunity last year to file an appeal when everything came out. The schools that will be presented today did not. Other than that information right there, I did not get any other information from Middle Park in terms of the extraordinary circumstances, enrollment changing, items like that. So again, their request would be to be reclassified from 2A to 1A. We can go through all of these individually and then come back and vote if you like, Chris, or vote,
Would you guys
recommend as we go.
Would you guys prefer to do a quick vote / recommendation as we go, or listen to them all and then come back and go through them? Everybody good if we just listen to them all and then come back? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next would be Wiley. Wiley is currently 8-man and requesting to go to 6-man. Wiley's enrollment numbers do put them in what would be classified as 6-man. So 6-man is from 6 to 69 athletes, enrollment numbers. Their current enrollment is at 58. Okay. Extraordinary circumstances for Wiley would be that they did not complete the season due to lack of players. So their enrollment numbers do put them at 6-man, and they didn't have enough to field an 8-man team. They do have support from their current league in leaving 8-man, and they do have, and Trey, you could speak on this if you like, support from the 6-man committee to join 6-man. Trey, anything you would want to add to that?
No, not really. We did at our meeting discuss this one, with their enrollment being, in 6-man anyways, we would go ahead and accept them in, and nobody really had any problems with that.
Thank you. Next would be Kalichi. Kalichi also is currently classified in 8-man and requesting to go to 6-man. Their current enrollment is 74. Last year was 74. Their current enrollment is now 62. So they did have a change in enrollment that would put them in the 6-man numbers. They do also have support from their current league in terms of leaving the league. Other items, they started the season with 13 players, played 1 game with 8 players, and finished 4 other games with 10 players or less. Current league supports their move, and they are predicting future declining enrollment. Trey, anything you wanted to add with 6-man with that?
Same as with Wiley, we had discussion on that one, and with their enrollment being within the numbers, we would go ahead and accept them as well.
Okay. One other request from 8-man to 6-man was Custer County. Custer County, reasons for their change request would be safety concerns, competitiveness, enrollment trend, and participation rate. Their enrollment does currently leave them in 8-man. They said last year they had 12 to 15 players on the roster over the past few seasons. Only 9 or 10 able to play due to injuries. Past 4 seasons since COVID. They are 4-28. Have not been 500 since 2018. Enrollment is trending down. I did not receive any numbers for that. Kids are leaving our middle school almost weekly. Our participation rate is roughly 12% of our male population of the school. We had 1 female play. We started the year with 10 players, gained 5 throughout the year. Trey, did you want to talk about 6-man with
That's what our
Custer County?
at our association meeting with that one, I would say as a whole, the 6-man association was not in huge favor of this one just due to the number of enrollment. Off the top of my head, I believe they're almost double what the 6-man number was. I'm not sure of the exact number, maybe 130 or something is where that was. So with that size, we just kind of thought it would be a struggle to go down with us being, sometimes 5 times as big as our smaller schools competing at the same level.
Thank you. One looking to go the other way from currently in 6-man going to 8-man would be Sangre de Cristo. They're requesting to move back to 8-man. Their school enrollment numbers have increased and anticipate the high school student enrollment numbers to continue to stay above 80, which would be in the 8-man area. They also feel by going from 6-man to 8-man that they would have more interest in football. Next, their current enrollment numbers for this year do put them in the 8-man classification. Last year's October count did not have them in 8-man classification. Their request would be to go up. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to add with the Sangre de Cristo items?
So with Wiley going down and Rocky Ford just shifted down into our league, if you proved Sangre de Cristo to go up, they could replace Rocky Ford, and Rocky Ford could go with our which is more geographically better for everything. So that's a feasible.
And Trey, just can you remind me, 6-man did not have a problem with Sangre de Cristo going to 8-man, leaving 6-man. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we didn't care about that one. That was fine.
Okay. That is all of them. I can refresh anybody's memory with certain things. Keep in mind a couple things. When when we build the leagues, for the most part, they're going to be 6-team leagues. Okay, 6-team leagues kind of help with the scheduling component, or I should say, an even number of teams help with the scheduling component. It doesn't create a bye situation. So when a team does leave a league, if there's not a replacement, there could be some scheduling issues with that. So please keep that in mind. So being able to fill a spot would be helpful, but not 100% necessary. All the schools, all the classifications that do not play 10 games do have a bye built into their schedule already, so have a little bit of flexibility if in finding a replacement if need be for a league.
That being said, remember our job as a football committee, part of our job is to build leagues. And so depending on where these schools shift, we will have to go back to the drawing board, which is not a problem at all. But that will be part of our job as a committee, especially for you 6-man, 8-mans, and 1As. And then we have what, 2A as well.
Yep.
So, let's discuss each one real quick, and then if there's discussion, great. And if not, then we'll just go to just a quick thumbs up or thumbs down in terms of your recommendation. And we want to hear from each class as well. Trey, you've already done quite a bit of that for us, so thank you for there. So first one on your list, sir?
Was Middle Park.
Middle Park. So 2A to 1A.
So Sean and Chris, thoughts? So you can look way on the back. You have your leagues there. So Middle Park is with Coleridge, Moffett, Aspen, Basalt, and Delta.
Where their numbers are too. And I know they didn't talk to the league or committee.
Chris, Medina, do you have an opinion, feelings?
I had a hard time hearing what Sean was saying on that one, just across the table there, but concern would just be within that, how the leagues would, impact with the 5 teams instead of 6 as far as, changing them from 2A to 1A.
Also, Reed and
Levi.
your thoughts, because it would also impact your.
Two, they mentioned win-losses. I think we're more interested in numbers on roster. They didn't have kids 2 years ago, which is a lot for one. Usually we're in that low to 20s to mid 30s category. You get over 40, that's a lot for one football. The only challenge I see is there have been several 1As that are saying they're playing JV. So we already have an issue. We created a Sheridan drop down to JV. So that league, which is our league, I believe in the next cycle, is off of that, we're down to a 5-team league. So, that makes it challenging.
Levi?
I would agree with that. The challenge is we're losing so many teams. But it would be difficult for me to support it with what Sean's saying as well. They didn't go through their league. They didn't start this process early. So I wouldn't support it, but there is a concern of losing 1A schools, not only in your conference, but the Western.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I reached out to play the non-league. We're trying to figure out ways. But do you think that Billy all of the conferences 1A?
So, what I'm hearing is, from our 2As and our 1As, is that there's not support for this. Am I hearing correctly, Sean? Reed? Levi, Chris, am I hearing that there's not support for this? You're okay, bud? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs
Was there a
down.
question? I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. We're hearing that the 2A and the 1A is not in support of this.
Okay.
You're good with that, sir?
Say again?
You're good with that in not support?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to the rest of the committee. Is there any input? Is there any discussion? Heartburn, speak now, forever hold your peace.
We're setting precedent. I'm just saying. You're gonna get, if you decide that last year, where people were placed doesn't matter, how many more of these, not this year, the next year, are going to come? They are going to be flooding in if someone says, I told you my numbers were gonna be down, now they're all of a sudden a classification below that cutoff of where their number placed them. They're gonna want a petition to play outside of the, I'm assuming, and my question was, did any of these schools appeal this last February?
No, they're not allowed to reappeal.
They're not.
They appealed in the first place. The bylaw states that there should be new data essentially allowed to appeal now and not last.
So to be clear, all of the schools you just discussed, none of them appealed last year.
Correct.
The only thing I would say is that I moved from 2A to 1A where you had 40 one year and then 26 the other year. That's tighter. The difference between 6 and 8 man, having 4 kids is much bigger. So the 6th grade, 6th grade.
So I'm wondering if I can switch some around. Okay. Previous experience as the chair, that's not a good.
So one thing, when we went through all the leagues, doing all the models, doing 2-2 and 2, trying to balance wins and so forth, and several from like 3A were rather than custom and 2A. I agree. A lot of work on balancing the leagues as best we can with geographic, quality, everything we would put into. I think that'll just put a hole in it.
Again, we don't have to take a vote, but I would just like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Just so John has the voice of the football committee. So we are talking right now about Middle Park from 2A to 1A. Are we good on discussion? All right, thumbs up or thumbs down, please. Okay. I am seeing that John will be able to say that the football committee does not support this move. Okay, sir, next one.
I just got a text from Patrick saying it's hard to hear us.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are the speakers, so if you want to
Yeah,
put
make
them
sure
in
they're-
between, get people at your table, or make sure when you're gonna speak, maybe a little bit closer to you. I guess they're not speakers, they're microphones.
Now we are going to move for Wiley from 6-man to 8-man. Also, I think the text message Mike and I just got is use your coaching voice a little bit for the committee members. That will help as well. Wiley, sir. That is 8-man, so I would like to hear from our 8-man folks as well as our 6-man, which we heard a little bit from 6, but Colleen and Josh, feelings?
Based on the 6-man, based on their numbers and what Reed also mentioned in terms of, and I guess it's just mathematically a lot more predictability with a small group of people.
Based on their enrollment numbers, they said they'd be classified as 6A now anyway. Sorry. And they didn't get to complete this season. So I would be in support of them going down because I also think, like I told you earlier, if there's a feasible solution with the one team that's asking to go up when we get to that point.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, you're good.
I was just gonna say, I'm not 6 or 8 man, but I also serve as a superintendent at the Ray School District in a rural community, very close to Caliche. I think it is more fair for these schools where it's not that 2-year, where they're getting their true numbers from this October count. There is a lot of fluctuation, depending on jobs and things like that, especially these small schools. So I think these current numbers, it really does represent actually what they have and what they have to work with for the next year. It's much different than a bigger school. So just given that part.
That's great. Trey, anything else to add, sir?
No, not really. When we discussed, it was an easy fit to slide them into a league. They'd go into the Southeast League with Eads and everything anyways, as far as travel and everything. They fit right in. And we actually just had a scheduling committee meeting to schedule everything, and we went ahead and put them in a schedule just in case they did get moved in. So it looked as if everything was good scheduling wise with them as well. And they didn't finish season. I know, I think last year, not this current year, but the year before, I believe they forfeited a game or two that year as well because of not having enough numbers. So we didn't have any problem coming down and trying to help them out with trying to build that program back.
And there are some, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some easy moves in terms of if this goes through, there are some easy moves in terms of leagues, and you guys have already thought about some of that. Is that correct?
Correct. We've actually already put them in and scheduled them in a league with our schedule. We last Sunday had our big scheduling meeting where we schedule everybody and went ahead and scheduled them in anyways, just in case they did come down, and we'd make the move if they didn't come down.
Other discussion from anybody in the room on outside of that classification point? Okay. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask for a thumbs up if you support it, or a thumbs down if you do not support it. So I'm seeing all but one with a thumbs up. We will be football committee will be in favor. Right, our next one, sir.
Caliche, similar situation, minus the leagues.
Can you elaborate on that?
With Wiley, there's an easy move there. Caliche would be able to slide into a league. 6-man has that figured out. If this does get approved, it does leave a hole in their current league. And so let's see here. Their current league does support them leaving. They did provide new information, as Levi had mentioned earlier, regarding updated enrollment data. Their enrollment trends went from 2021, there were 87 kids. Last year's October count 74. This year's October count 62. So 12 or 13 kids a year they're dropping.
Colleen or Josh, thoughts, feelings?
Desire to be in 6-man. A lot of it was based on their enrollment and what kind of a trend that they're seeing. And again, I'll just echo what I said before in terms of seeing that enrollment decrease. And I think it significantly impacts. I mean, if you only have 20 kids in a class and then half of that class is gone, it's a significant impact to all of your programs across the entire school. So that's what I would say. I mean, I know that he, obviously reached out with all the same information that, he provided John, but just based on that enrollment.
Josh?
I would say the same thing. Their enrollment right now currently puts them in 6-man. They're requesting the same thing. It does put a hole in their league, but it looks like there's one league that has 7 teams in it, and it looks like with a couple shuffle around, you could fill that out so they would all have 6. So I think based on their enrollment and their request on going down, and the fact that hole could probably be filled to make it 6 teams in all leagues versus 7 in one, I would say that you could probably make that move.
And Trey, please.
Yeah, same as Wiley. We didn't really have any problems with this move down. We went ahead and already had placed them in the league as far as our schedule making process as well, and that went fairly smooth on that. So we didn't have any problem with this, and they fit right into a league in the north up there in the 6-man.
Committee discussion?
Trey, did anybody provide you information about where their 7th and 8th grade classes and their sizes numbers? I mean, this happens, right? We see it, and then the 7th and 8th grade classes are bigger, and again, would bump them right back up into from current. I mean, you're talking 64 kids, right, at Caliche, with the limit is 69. If they had one small class and now they go 2 classes in a row that are bigger, then all of a sudden they're right back in the middle of 8-man numbers.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily provided that, but we had a neighboring school, Fleming there, that's very close to them, that plays them in middle school football, and they were very confident that that their numbers are pretty well established and remain the same. I don't think there's going to be a huge influx as far as their enrollment goes. So Fleming had played them in the middle school and didn't have any problem with bringing them down. We kind of leaned on Fleming and their coach discussion as far as what that would look like, and he was pretty confident that it would be steady there as 6-man numbers.
Any other discussion? Okay. Thumbs up for a recommendation, thumbs down for a not recommended. Okay, thank you. Same as the last one? All but one? Very good, sir.
Custer County, I was able to look up their enrollment in last year's October count. They were at 105 kids. I did not receive any updated enrollment numbers for this year, so that's the only data I have in terms of their enrollment. So they're solidly in the 8-man classification. There's probably 15, 18 teams that have a smaller enrollment than them in 8-man. I haven't received any, updated information, which is supposed to be provided in terms of enrollment or other extenuating factors that would cause them to change classifications.
That is 8-man, right? 8 to 6. Colleen and Josh again.
So they are in our league, and I wasn't aware of any requests of them trying to go down to 6-man. So that was never discussed in our league in the first place. They have about as many kids as we do as far as the teams go, and when we play them, they're pretty competitive. And the last time we played them in junior high, their team was a pretty good size, and they put a whooping on us pretty bad. So based on, they didn't give a lot of information, and their enrollment still puts them in 8-man. So.
Yeah, as far as our discussion on that, the big topic in our room was their enrollment being up pretty high. And not that it's completely accurate. We kind of went through the Max Preps rosters and stuff, and it looked like from year to year they were consistently in that 20 or above as far as having kids out for football. You know, where at our level, if you got 20 kids in the 6-man, you're a huge team. We're usually dealing with 12 to 15 kids out. So we thought the enrollment level and, you know, looking at their scores and stuff, we thought competitive wise that they, you know, they're still right there in that 8-man level. So we didn't think enrollment that it really deserved coming down, especially with some of our lower end teams being really small, barely able to field teams and not really being competitive. We didn't realize, or we didn't think that it would be worth bringing a bigger school in to our classification.
Okay, other discussions? Thumbs up, recommendation. Thumbs down, not recommended. Thank you. I'm seeing unanimous, not recommended, sir.
Okay, last one was Sangre de Cristo, kind of the reverse process, going from 6-man to 8-man. Projected numbers, they're currently this year at 77, which would put them in 8-man. At the end of next cycle, which is what we're talking about placing them in, they're going to be closer to 100 kids. So their request is to move back to 8-man, which they were in the past.
Okay. Conversation. Our 8-man folks.
So geographically, with Wiley moving down, if Rocky Ford shifted over into that league, that's a very feasible solution.
Okay. And Trey?
Yeah, we didn't have any problem with the request for them to move up. We really weren't familiar with their numbers. That they didn't really provide a lot of information to us, so other than they just wanted to move up. So.
Other discussion? Please do.
They were in favor of Koichi. Anything else with Sangre?
Thumbs up, recommended. Thumbs down, not recommended. Unanimous recommendation, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else on clock appeals? And discussions?
Just want a reminder that this is not finalized. This is something that would be presented to, see if there's some things going on. I would be contacting the classification reps.
Thank you. Mr. Casey, is Jen? Okay.
She texted me something about, she's currently on 2 Zooms. And we'll talk.
Okay. You'll let me know, okay? We're also gonna skip the regular season scheduling discussion until Mr. Wilkins gets here, yes, sir?
Greg, do you want to wait?
Greg, do you wanna wait for Jason, or?
You know, I can go ahead. I don't know if he's on his way or not, to be honest with you.
Jump on that padded camp while you check, if that's okay? Does that work, Greg? Okay,
Did we want?
oh, duh. I just skipped it. Okay, let's back up actually to qualifying and seating process. And so, Sully's gonna review the qualifying and seating for each one of our classes. And then, I'm gonna go to each classification, just ask, you guys happy with where you're at, things are good with where you're at, concerned with where you're at. Fair enough? All right, sir.
So qualifying, the other sports, 50-50 with Max Preps RPI. So Brian has created a normalization, where there wouldn't be any negative numbers. That helped this year very much in that there weren't any ties. Last year, previous year, there were some ties that we had to look at the next level data. Didn't have that problem at all this year. So qualifying, all league champions were qualifiers, and then dependent on the classification, whether it be 16 or 24, the rest of the bracket, either 16 or 24, would be filled by the top values for the combined Max Preps RPI. That was also the seeding process as well, so we just kept that right in order. So if you were the number one, you had the number one Max Preps RPI, whether you were a league champion or not, you were the overall number one seed, and so on down through 16. We did have, I believe, 2 or 3 teams that did get bumped out of playoffs, either being that 16th or 24th team, because a league champion was outside of that top 16 or 24, and they were guaranteed a spot. So that is the qualifying and seeding process.
So what I'd like to go through, and we'll just start with 6-man. I'd just like to hear from each classification. You guys are good, you're happy, you're not hearing rumblings. I want to make sure that the committee discusses it for each classification, so we can tell our community that it was. Right, I think you're our only rep for 6A, or now you guys got me going on it. 6-man, please, sir.
Yeah, we're good with everything that we have going on. We were one of those classifications, I believe, that had the 16 seed bumped out for league champ, but didn't hear any rumblings or anything about that. We understood that's the way it falls in our level of football. Sometimes league to league and year to year with graduation stuff, sometimes, a league is down. So we're just okay with that. It is what it is.
Okay, thank you, Trey. Colleen and Josh for 8-man.
Couple of schools on the opposite side liked RPI and seating index and thought it was all good. So we had kind of feedback on both sides. In addition, there was some discussion just because, and I think similar to 6-man and some smaller schools, like there are some significant travel times, and playoff game scheduling on Friday or Saturday was sometimes a little bit contentious, I think, between the 2 teams and trying to agree upon a day. And there was just comments about, making sure that back to, greater than 150 miles, what that day should be, and those sorts of things. So making sure that we're staying true to the CHSAA bulletin in those areas. So that was one piece. Additionally, there was some discussion about having so many teams in 8-man and potentially changing to a larger bracket for postseason, just in terms of there is that much variability within, after the top 5 teams, there is a significant amount of variability and they can beat each other on any given day, and having the opportunity for more teams to qualify and have the option to move on further into the bracket. So back pieces that we had for 8-man.
And Levi, please.
I guess I would say the qualifying seeding process for us really is hand in hand with the regular season scheduling. There's just with 1A, there's not really, you don't have an opportunity to play down necessarily. And then there's a lot of us that are spread out. And for us, I'll just give us as an example, we play a 3A and a 2A Kansas team. How does that, how that works in the RPI? We just don't have a lot of interconference play in 1A. And I think if we could get more interconference play, the RPI and everything is more valid. Now I don't know, because we're not playing, the same schools aren't playing each other. It's a difficult formula and all that. So that's the input that I've got from coaches and ADs, and I would agree with that as well. Is really our scheduling kind of drives that. And I'll let Reed speak.
Difficult, but that's not part of the qualifying. I don't think there's any point to add any more teams. The 16 and the 1 are not going to be evenly matched to begin with. So adding to 24 doesn't make a lot of sense unless there's some bye situations where you're playing the back end to have an opportunity to play the 1. But I didn't get any, like, we wanted 18 to have to go, or 24 to come play. So.
Our folks on two, Sean and Chris, please. I'll start with Sean, Chris, and then we'll go to you.
I've kind of heard a little bit of stuff from 2A and other classifications just about scheduling wise. I'm next cycle. Some of the end of the qualifying the past couple years is 16-ish qualifying. The 17th and 19th, and some have been league champs and help out the 16. So they brought up and asked the question: do we add 10 games, or do we add 24 out? Kind of thing. And a couple people said if they had 10 games, then they open up that opportunity for the 1As or help 3As. Either way, I think, but they brought that up about both ways if we could look at least that option. And then their idea is like 6-man, 8-man, 1A, and 2A is a championship weekend, and then 3, 4, 5 that truly have their 2 weekends and have the 10 weeks in the playoffs. So if it's 16 or 24 or 9 or 10, they brought up both of those just for us to think about and talk about it. And they said I think it'll help with scheduling, because a lot of times if you only have 9 games, where's your week off? And is like getting that piece worked out, and stadiums and so forth for some was difficult, but they said the 10, you truly have 5 league games, 5 non-league, and it makes it a lot balancer kind of thing. So they said I'll bring it up to everybody.
Chris?
Sean and I've been texting back and forth here a little bit just to make sure I was hearing what he was saying there. I hadn't really heard the, calls for those 9 and 10 or the playoff changes as he's calling for, but it's not something that I think people would be opposed to. Looking at either the 9 and 24 or the 10 and 16, either way, it kind of adds more games to the schedule. We kind of have that bye week right now that sometimes is a little bit of an issue for some people, but I haven't heard a whole bunch, of actual outreach from people with a lot of complaints about how we're doing things right now. So.
If you wanted to go down that road, we would need a proposal, we would need a second, and we would need to have discussion and a vote, if that's something you want to go down.
I think also, let me add to that. I mean, that would be a change in the bylaws. So I think somebody would need to put forth a bylaw proposal that would need to come to our office.
So not through the football committee, but
Correct.
through an actual, through the league, if you will.
Correct, and we could get a recommendation on it.
Okay.
Jake, you mentioned earlier about that same talk too, like that be something that goes through association through you guys, or?
I mean, it has to go through a league.
Yeah.
That would have to go through a league, so. We'll let you guys discuss that, discuss and all of those kind of things, and then if it comes back through where there is that bylaw, I'm assuming that we'll need to have that discussion, and we will have to make a stance in terms of the football committee is in support or the football committee is not in support. Okay? Great. All right, thank you for that. 3A, Mr. Bravo, Greg Hawkins, and Joe Roskin, please.
I have no complaints whatsoever from the southern part of the state, so we're all good on our end.
Joe?
Greg? Yeah, we did have some discussions built around why we're so different in 3A, than everyone else, because we have a bye week and the 16-team playoff, and most of the coaches that I've talked with and a couple of the ADs would be in support of no bye week with 24 teams, and where we're more aligned. with that same weekend that we would have 3A, 4A, 5A state championship games. So that was our biggest discussions. Of course, everybody complains about that we don't really know the algorithm for max preps, you know?
Can I go back to that
Yeah.
real quick? And then we're gonna have Mr. Casey talk about that. Hey, any chance I get, the bus, you under, here we go. Let me answer that 3A question, and I want to make sure everybody on the football committee knows the answer to that question. The football committee, when we went with the 24 with 5A, you guys remember, we went down that path, and then 4A came to us and said, we'd like to be a part of that. That discussion happened. Committee members were tasked with going out, gaining information, and it was brought back to us saying 3A wanted to stay 16. They wanted to stay with that current schedule. So, not saying that it's right, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that's the historical piece of that, is that it was discussed, and just like you guys are making recommendations and those kind of things, it was brought back to us saying, nope, leave 3A as is, just like we are. So, if that is something that you guys want to start exploring, you'll have to go down that path in terms of getting that bylaw and all of those kind of things. So thank you. And then I interrupted you, so if you want to start beating up the Ryan again, feel free.
You know, I love Ryan. However, you know, it's just a complaint that we get. That every time that we talk about seating, don't know criteria. That's our only, you know, and, but I just always want to open that up because it's a discussion I have constantly about why we're using max preps.
It's a 20-page algorithm, and it's a power ranking system. I mean, we're going to go into it a lot more in depth, I think, later. But strength of schedule, margin of victory, capped margin of victory, you know, wins and losses, obviously. It's a more advanced version of the RPI, essentially. But it is a 20-page algorithm that is proprietary to their company. Yeah.
He walks through that.
I paid. Yeah.
Go on that, if I remember right, that day, stuff, if I remember right, there's a couple league champs that were in the top 16 that bumped some people out. So again, some of the leagues I am in are mixed, and they brought that up too about the 24th. That's better for them or not, and then the additional buy too. I think that was right 3A that had that.
Right.
Yeah, as far as the selection process and qualifying, I feel like everything I've heard we're good with. With the lack of not knowing the formula, there is transparency that everybody can see max preps and see where you're at in RPI, so that everybody knows and everybody has the same criteria. So from that standpoint, we like it. The one thing that I hear a lot is that there is the clause in there on geographical as a possibility of changing seating, and that's frustrating from the Western Slope side because we travel more than anybody else, and to use that as an excuse to move somebody one way or another, we don't feel like that's truly fair. We feel like where you're seated is where you should be, and geographic should not be a major factor in that. I just heard that from a couple people on the Western Slope.
4A, Coach Greibel and Paul. Okay, positive feedback from your side of the house. Coach?
I spoke with several coaches within our conference and outside just to see if there was any input to bring to today, but they were all happy. Everyone was thumbs up with the way it's set up and the way it's going with 24 and 4A and the seating and the combination of max preps RPI. Everyone was content right now, so that's our input.
Did you hear that? People are happy.
We'll have to throw a stink bomb in it. And Ms. Cormany and Mr. Hughes with 5A.
So the only thing that I've got, which we'll come back to Ryan a little bit later, is on the impact of what forfeits did to the bracket itself and what that means for schools who essentially faced a penalty for something that they didn't do, and what that meant to the overall integrity of the bracket and how that bracket played out. No, there was no argument. Anybody that sent me feedback was on whether the 2014 bracket is exactly, I think, where 5A needs to be. But it's how those teams are placed inside that bracket. Some extenuating circumstance like this comes out and impacts a number of schools. I mean, it impacted a lot of people in this process. So how did it go about that?
Tracy?
It's just us and Valcourt Carson now, so we didn't have any concern with this part.
From the Southern Colorado area. Okay. Thank you for that input. Thank you for that discussion. So we are, where is Jen, on or off? Just,
She said she's gonna get back on.
she's on.
I'm on here, Chris.
Okay, perfect. So online is Jen Roberts-Ulig, and she, for those who don't know, is one of our commissioners and oversees the SMAC committee, Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. So Jen, the floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Thanks for your work. So really quick, just sports medicine wise, you know, as we go through our deliberations throughout the year, we have one official meeting that comes in February, what puts things in front of the membership to be approved or you know, denied at that point. And so I can just tell you that kind of as it relates to football, lots of conversation to where I actually had to go meet with about 8 doctors who are very concerned about ambulance on sites and how the whole EAP is being done at football games, et cetera, et cetera. I did kind of talk through what that process looks like and how local level has some control over how those football games are. There are going to be some recommendations that come from some of the conversations, and more importantly, some of the things we've seen throughout football this season. And again, it's one of those things that we talk about emergency action plans. We talk about, you better have one, you better, you know, go through it. But if we're not practicing it, if we're not taking, you know, essentially the book off the shelf outside of just, you know, connecting with your coaches, there is going to be room for error, and that error is pretty significant, as we can all imagine. And so anything from gates being open for ambulances, from ambulances being on site when we have a catastrophic, to how soon can we get them there? Obviously things happen, but it's our role from sports medicine to kind of put things in place to support our schools and kind of give them recommendations. And then obviously at the local level, do some of that, you know, kind of charismatic way of just verifying what we're doing and practicing it weekly. I think we're also going to get into some, it's been a recommendation, but kind of some mandates around huddles before games. Really, that is just a simple, you know, right before a game, Sheridan Inglewood's going out for a game, they're going to meet, have a quick sideline huddle or team timeout, medical timeout. That'll just review emergency action plans, kind of who's in charge, how that process comes. But we will have to find a way to kind of make sure that's happening, and how do we, you know, diligently go through that work. So I know that's going to be a big topic for us in February. And then looking at just heat acclimatization, it's been something that's been on for quite a while for sports medicine. Again, football always comes to the forefront in those conversations and what that looks like. Obviously, our sports medicine group is amazing. They do a tremendous job with our our handbook. And then from our office, we try to do things that are called SMAC alerts that kind of bring things from that handbook to life when times matter. And so we try to make sure people have heat index charts, are really diligent in their work in August, July and August, even September we saw this year, and just making sure things are safe for kids. So there'll be some more information. Again, our job is just to try to educate and provide supports along the way. And then the other big thing I would just share is PPE forms, which is more physical based, and who, and obviously the athletic director at schools will be the one that kind of enforces that, but looking at a true across the board form, which is a very big switch when we have anything from Kaiser to, little clinics, to all of those. There is a PPE form. It is a document in which the school will get one form, but the parents are filling out multiple forms to give that information so we can catch things, possibly if there is a heart condition, if there's other stuff. We're just seeing too many kids be getting a one line, hey, they're good to participate without a solid physical. And we've been working on this for quite some time. So if we did a PPE rollout, it's been a recommendation. It'll move to slowly a mandate to where like 2025, 2026 would become kind of a true mandate for all of our schools. As the work's going to need to be done not only with our schools, but really our healthcare system. And so, again, talking about our sports medicine handbook, our sports medicine group, there's multiple people that serve on that, from UC Health to Children's to all the key players. So we're hoping to kind of move that forward. So I would say those are the three biggest things that, really kind of could play a role in what's happening in the football room, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that update. Questions? Anyone for Jen? Okay, perfect. Jen, thank you.
Awesome. You got it. Good luck today.
Thank you. All right, before we jump into our regular season scheduling discussion, because that could take a little bit, let's do a quick 5-minute. We are officially at 10, we're gonna call it 10:10. We'll be right back at 10:15, and you guys will be right up. Good to see you, Mr. Wilkins.
Coach Wilkins to you.
Oh, excuse me, we are in the middle of basketball season. How goes it, Coach?
Got our first home win last night.
Nice, you haven't been thrown out yet?
No.
Time?
It was close. Roseville,
Who won that game?
but they won by 2.
Sean was there. We did. What? It's awesome. I mean, it's
Who's serving as the head coach?
Joshua Chambers. Yeah.
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 I was gonna.
Hey.
Over 3 hours.
Well, and he and I were talking, and I texted one of the guys that had helped us.
Yeah.
You know, last night,
Yeah.
but he replied in the morning, like
Yeah.
early, but then.
I'll let you know. I'll see what the rest of it looks like.
Yeah, good news is now
Are
we
we
have
unmuted?
you have the
Code,
password for it,
yeah.
the extra
Well,
code.
and supposedly he put in the block for no more updates.
Okay.
Jason and Greg, when you guys speak, can you take your microphones literally right under you? Maybe not your coach's voice.
There you go.
Yeah, so everybody.
Like somewhere between normal and coaching voice.
Press it or not?
Nope, you're good. You're good. All right, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and come back. I'm happy to introduce the athletic director at Cherry Creek High School, Jason Wilkins, and Greg Critchett. Greg, give us your title again.
Assistant Athletic Director for Cherry Creek School.
Perfect. So they are here to talk a little bit about regular season scheduling. So the floor is yours, gentlemen. And thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us. And, you know, we have a unique situation that has popped up in that we're struggling to find or schedule non-conference games for Cherry Creek High School. And basically this fall, when I was meeting with Larry Bull, we would sit and talk and go over potential teams with the cycle coming up. And he would say, I've already reached out to him. And reached out to him, it's a no, reached out. So that's posed to be a little bit of an issue. And we've been able to get two. There's 2 games I think that Jason says that he has right now. But we're looking for, there's 3 that we're missing. And within that, we're looking for a little bit of help. And when we start to look at the states nearby, you know, sometimes the cycle's not matching with everything from COVID and everyone's on a different time frame. So that's proving to be a challenge. On top of that, we've been able to contact a few companies that try to match make and help set that up. And the matchmaking companies, there's a fee that you have to pay to have the match. And then on top of that, you have to come up with travel, which we all know right now that the cost of travel is astronomical. So the other piece that we have in our district, we've also refocused in terms of our safety and security and working to make sure that we have the security in place and the security, the pay for some of our district security guards. And so that's changing some of our budgets. So when you're talking about having to have extra money to schedule out-of-state games, it's really difficult when you're trying to do everything all at once. So that is the big issue that we're seeing. And I know Jason has a little more, some of the more specifics, and he'll go into that.
Thanks. I know that, start out by saying I know that no one feels sorry for us. I get that whole thing, right? I'm aware. But it's been a real big struggle for us because I want to play. And I have an email from every 5A school and some 4As that say no. So I save them all, right? So I can document that we've tried to talk to everybody. And we'll say things like for Fort Collins or, you know, Western Slope or wherever, we'll go there both years and still no. And you contact other states and they do all the scheduling for their teams. Teams don't get to make their schedule in certain states, right? Or they're off cycle. Or IMG or Bishop Gorman will say yes. Okay. Like that's a whole different deal. So one of the things that I personally feel frustrated with as an athletic director with scheduling all sports is kind of the CHSAA mission of, you know, partnership, working together like that. We send our teams and pay the expense to go every year to go to the Western Slope to play games, or we try to schedule teams in the Springs, or we try to schedule teams in Fort Collins on purpose as a partner and to do the right thing and play games in different areas, that kind of things. And I know a lot of schools try not to do that on purpose because they don't want to have to travel. But I kind of get it, but then I look back and I know everyone says, well, You know, you guys are in a different class and that kind of stuff. We haven't gone undefeated in a normal season ever. We've lost every year. We lost again this year. We didn't even win the state title, right? We lose, right? Every other year we've won the state title, we've lost in the state, right? So I don't know, you know, some of that. I get that there's the whole, we don't want to play a team twice because we think we're going to win the state title, so we don't want to play in the regular season and have to play you again in the playoffs. I get all that. Last year, for example, we went to Cleveland for a game, not counting food and some other things. It was about $60,000 to travel there is what the cost was just for hotels and flights. Took about 30 to 40 hours spent just arranging all of that and setting that up, and then all the manpower and everything else to supervise and go and all the things that go with that. I know if we have to schedule 3 out-of-state teams, you know, and Ryan might talk to this a little bit with the thing, but we're going to lose points for playing these teams. We're going to lose points potentially in the RPI system and be penalized for that when we don't really have another choice. Kind of like we were involved in Mr. Hughes's example of a team that got had to forfeit this year. So there's, you know, there's things like that that come up too. I personally believe this. I could be wrong. You know, and I know people say, you know, well, there's a gap and this kind of thing. I think if we travel more, gap's going to widen. Because I think families and kids are going to want to move in to play, to travel, to get that exposure. I think it'll get worse. That's my opinion. You know, I just we don't know what to do. I know there's no real solid, hey, here's the answer, here's the fix, right? Because I know CHSAA doesn't want to do the schedules for everybody. I know that there's all those kind of things. We're just open to ideas, thoughts that people may have. We reached out, I don't know if you know Ryan Knorr down at Durango. He reached out to a bunch of New Mexico schools for me that are real good. They all said no. I mean, we've tried a lot of things. But we're going to have to, if we have to travel twice in a season, I mean, we're going to end up spending $140,000 to $150,000 just to play 2 football games, right? That's out of control to me. That's ridiculous. So we're just, I don't know, you know, what to do. I mean, I offered to pay a school. We'll give you some money if we come there because that's way cheaper than doing this. I don't know. I just don't have any ideas or thoughts of how to play games, how to get games. You know, and I feel like we're already, if you look at our schedule, we're already trying to schedule the hardest teams possible, right? Our kids get beat up because we play top 10 school about every single week, you know, and I get people, who cares? I know nobody cares, but our kids they care. Get beat up pretty good physically every week. So anyway, that's kind of our sob story, but we're looking for help or things to do. Just for the record, Pine Creek and Regis agreed to play. That's it.
We have found ourselves in the same boat at Pine Creek. We couldn't find a 10th game, so had arranged to pay a team from Albuquerque to come up for when they came to us, and then obviously we would pay for ourselves to go down there. It was like a $10,000 agreement, and then my understanding is Arapahoe stepped up and agreed to play us. So we don't have to do that, but we are in the same boat.
We'll call them. Who are they?
I'll give it to you. I'll give you the information. And for a while, we thought it was going to be 2 games.
Yeah, the 3 is just, and then I know it's just, we got all these stadium scheduling issues, right? Because we have teams in multiple leagues just in our district, and there's just pieces, right? And we don't know how to schedule anything because we don't know what our school's doing. And so trying to do homecomings and just all the pieces that you guys all know about how all that works. It's got other schools on hold. It also, this is just full disclosure, it gets to a point where, and I don't like any of this stuff, right? But like we help other schools out in other areas. Like we rent our pool out to other districts that don't have pools but want to have swim teams. It makes me want to say, no, we won't rent it to you Go find yourself. Because we offered to play you in football and you're a top 6, top 8 team and you won't play us. And you're going to play somebody that has a really bad record, so we don't want to rent you our pool anymore. Like, that's where your head goes. I don't want my head to go there in this type of scenario, but I mean, I don't know, what do you do?
I think the risk of out-of-state travel is twofold also. One, we went to Las Vegas, and then this year, all of a sudden, they couldn't come, but they'd scheduled a game that same weekend that we were supposed to play them. And then the other part is a Title IX issue. Like, we face a serious issue with the amount of money that we put towards a travel like that, because we are literally unable to put out $80,000 as a significant amount of money that goes to one female sport. It's impossible.
150 is going to be a lot.
I think that part of it goes back to what you said, right? When we're talking about one end, you can't go down to play somebody. They don't have the ability to go up. They don't have.
We actually had a 3A school that said they'd play us. And we declined that because I don't know that that would have been good for anybody. But
There's always this element that without some sort of system that is like a Champions League, you're 3 in this league, go play the 3 in the next. The mandatory interleague play, it's going to be always complicated because we always want the best matchups for our school. We're always trying to project, okay, how is our school going to be the next year? Okay, let me play that team. We ran into that issue. We're going to play the number 1 team in the state. We're going to get our butts kicked and strong for it. But it's like, I needed another game. And some schools know that's not a good matchup, so they don't want to play it. So, and I understand the reason for that. So without requiring it, I don't know how to fix that.
This is my first meeting, but what have been the discussions of CHSAA taking a larger, because for different reasons, ours is just because of location, we're in the same, thing. What have been the discussions about CHSAA taking a bigger role in schedule making it mandatory to play interconference games? What conversations have been?
I think some of the conversations that I've had with Jason and some other people is teams that are really good or geographically isolated. So it's difficult to try and mandate something if there obviously there's a need for certain schools, but this is a issue that would be the question to ask. Going back to it, if we created a structure like Reed was suggesting, is this in the best interest of the state? Because it does help people out. It does create 1 less game or 2 less games, however we do it, however we could possibly do it for coaches and ADs to try and find games. So, I think it doesn't matter what you do. If you do nothing or you do something, you're not going to make everybody happy. So I think the ideal situation is, I think, to figure out what the issue is. And I don't really know how to explain what that issue is, other than people are really concerned about losing a game. To me, that seems to be the issue. Losing a game or travel would be the 2 things that I think our people are most concerned about. And are those valid reasons? I don't have an answer. But I know we have discussed in 1A the situation that your entire league faces. You struggle to get non-conference games. And, I know there's 8-man up in the northeast corner. They struggle to get some games as well. Is the answer the state stepping in and helping out? I don't know. That's something we discussed today with structure.
I'd be interested also, because I just don't know how 6-man does it. They seem to get together as a classification and just kind of hammer it out in a room.
Ray, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the way we do it is at our annual meeting, after the championship game, we just come up with a committee. Two people from each league, are nominated, or volunteer to be on that committee. I've been on it every year except for this year, and we just call it the scheduling committee. The leagues then submit, to one central person their league schedule. So we do that on our own amongst our leagues. And then in that meeting, they schedule the non-conference games, there. And we go ahead as far as putting the homes and aways and everything in, and we put it within a spreadsheet. And we do a pretty good job about spreading the competition out, lower level teams playing lower level teams and higher level and so forth. And, some of that, I'm not at that school, but we kind of have a dynamic in six man as well. As we have a team in Stratton who's won 30 straight games by running clock. And nobody really wants to play them. So, the way we do it does help out because it creates a schedule for them as far as a non-conference. And I mean, they play the toughest schedule in the league every year because, they want that and they're that good. But we really don't have too much complaining about it. But yeah, we just have a committee, two people from each league, that go together. We try to get some ADs on there, some coaches on there that have different insides and stuff, and go ahead and do that. And then we just send it out. And I mean, right or wrong, we tell them you don't get a choice. Your schedule is your schedule, and you're going to play it. And don't change the games.
To me, that seems like a good compromise where you're not getting just mandated by CHSAA. Everybody's getting represented. To me, for at least one, and I'm not obviously speaking for anybody else, I think that should be something that should be explored for 1A, at least.
Anxiety that, like every other sport, if you need to pick up a game, hey, we'll play you Lions. Oh, we'll move that from Thursday to next Tuesday. Football, you have 1 week to do it. It has to happen between Thursday and Saturday, even if you find somebody that you can play. Crap. Week 1 open, you got week 4. Now I gotta try to move these, and it just sometimes doesn't work. So, I think we'll probably connect and just figure out. I think there's several conferences that are elite in there for 1A, 8A, 2A that are at least close to one another. So you can have some interleague that wouldn't give us anxiety every fall trying to figure out, have you got your schedule yet?
So I've been an AD in Kansas and Missouri, and I've shared some of the stuff with John. I've played schools in Nebraska, Arkansas, you name it, and their model for football is different. They have leagues, and a lot of times your league is who you play, and you schedule a non-league and so forth. And how they qualify for postseason is why I think they don't have an issue as much, because there's a lot of multi-classification leagues where there's a mixture of 4, 5, and 6A, or 3, 4, and 5. And at one of the leagues I was in, the Sunflower that's in Olathe, in Shawnee Mission, our league schedule was, or our football schedule was set by our league entirely, and we had one non-league game. Some other leagues that are bigger, the Suburban in Missouri has like 28 schools. Again, their schedule is set by our leagues, but they qualify a lot more for the postseason. So they might only have 9, but then they see the state like split it in half, like East, West, 16, 16, or North and South, and then play it out. But Jason knows there's some schools in Kansas City the exact same problem. Nobody will play. So leagues come on board, and this is for a lot of their sports. Come on board and help with the scheduling model, and don't put it on the state or committees that they work together, kind of like six man does.
We actually had, that league came to us and we met with them last month. And they shared some of that stuff. They're like, it's great because their games are set.
And one thing, me being, when I was in Kansas City, we played a lot of schools in Lincoln. They went away from that. We weren't able to play them anymore because even in basketball, their schedule's set by the state. And so they're not able to travel out. And football the same. We played Northstar, something like that. And I think that's not good just for exposure, for one, for your kids, and two, and they weren't long trips. I mean, shoot, it's an hour drive kind of thing. But being in that area and just seeing, and the league I was in Kansas City on the Kansas side was the Sunflower League. and the state champ came out of our league almost every single year. Like Olathe, Shawnee Missions, all the schools, EKL, another one in Blue Valley. Those schools, again, majority of their league, but the EKL has like 3, 4, 5, and 6A in their league. And they play each other with like District VA, which is a monster school for it. So if we build it that way with leagues like 6-man, which is really interesting, I think that can help, because you're gonna have your ebb and flow in a lot of sports, but you never want to leave somebody out that can't get games because they're so good, or can't get games because they're so down. You like that as our job. Every sport, we should not do that. So I don't necessarily think the state should do this, but I think it should be put back on your leagues, kind of thing.
So, put that over here. Sorry. So we talked, and I talked to Larry extensively about this and about what does it mean for the state of Colorado? What does it look like for us when we're not helping a member school? We're just essentially neglecting one. And I know this happens to linemen, right? But they do have the ability to play up. They do have the ability to go get somebody up a class because it helps them. It doesn't help Cherry Creek. It doesn't help this situation. The other side of this coin is I know schools that are going to say it doesn't do our program any good to play them and get beat up early in the year when we know we have a league schedule to play. It doesn't do me any good as a school to play them. Why do I have to take the hit for that? And I get that. I do understand that from their school perspective, they've got to do what's right for what they say for their school. I threw it at Chris and Sully and Krugs a little bit. I talked to them about, is there a way to split our classification into 14 team segments? Your top tier is 14 schools, middle tier is 14 schools, your bottom tier is 14 schools. And you have to play one school from each of those tiers in your non-league. So that would be 3 non-league games that would be guaranteed for every school. That would just be a draw of the hat. You couldn't play a league school in that portion of your part, and it would impact where people finish in RPI and that type of thing about who you could play. But it would offer everybody a fair and equitable kind of RPI model and max prep model that they would be pretty similar in who they would get in that random draw. That leaves you 2 to get on your own to play a rival school, a 4A, whatever, a down situation, and would kind of limit some of the challenges that we're faced with that. And there's other schools that would fight that tooth and nail. They'd be like, no, we set this because we got 5 games in the league. You let us go get our 5 so that we can compete with whoever we want to compete with. That's good for all of us to do on our own. Every one of these hits a roadblock, but I don't want somebody to be punished for being good. I don't think that, and I don't want somebody to be punished for being bad. But it's easier to not be punished being bad, and you know that. I mean, people are not super opposed to playing somebody that's bad. But they are very opposed to playing someone who is good, to exceptional. And I just don't know of an easy answer. I wish I had just this one fix that could say, well, this fixes every class, because it would have to be class by class or a universal thing that we did. And when you have an odd classification, that model doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. The other way about what we talked about with the 6-man does work because they just put people in the right spot. The 6-man does put people in a situation. They say, hey, here's your schedule. Here's who you have to play. And there's really no appeal to that. That's just what you're going to get. I don't want to come to mandating. I don't like mandating ethics. I just don't feel like that's the right way for us to proceed as a state institution. But I do believe that there's good schools that just refuse to play. And that part of it is hard. And I feel for you. And I don't know how to make a rule that is 7 classifications of football that really becomes a 7 or 8 school situation who are really impacted, and how to make that fair. And I've been racking my brain for months trying to figure out, what does that look like? What could it be? And I don't know. Sully, your thoughts? What are you hearing or thinking or?
We've been having this discussion similar to you. I think there's an answer that everyone look at across leagues, things like that. We have a number of leagues. The geographic concerns that one league has everybody would be okay with to a point. You know, if we did crossover leagues, is this something that would change every cycle? So you're going against a different league? I don't have the answer. I mean, those are things we've looked at. You know, if you create leagues of 8, you have less scheduling to do outside of your league. That becomes a little bit tricky, I think, in 4A and 5A, because then do you get rid of the 2 developmental leagues? So I think each solution proposes some more problems. I think this is a problem, though, that schools are struggling to get games, and you know, I would, my concern is similar to yours. Similar to 6-man, I mean, that would be the ideal situation. So that, you know, 6-man in turn is mandating, but it's within their own classification. I don't think, personally, I don't think it's a place for the state to step in and create the leagues for just one sport. You know, if this were something that were done for other sports, obviously that I'd be okay with that, but I would struggle to do this for everybody.
I have one thing about like with 6-man that, you know, our committee that we put together does a really good job of is obviously the top end teams are playing each other and kind of the bottom end teams are playing each other. Well, it's really that middle of the road group that's playing each other that's all battling for those playoff spots anyway. So their strength of schedules for the most part are similar there, which creates that competitive balance. And then getting into the playoffs, you know, we have a weird dynamic in 6. I mean, we can pretty much tell you the 4 teams are going to play in the semifinals every year, and you know, things like that. So we can pair those teams up, but it does help with that ranking system, RPI Max Preps ranking, when our middle of the road teams are all kind of playing each other, and we don't have that up and down. I mean, of course, everybody's going to kind of have a down team on their schedule, and everybody's going to have a top team on their schedule, but then we fill that middle group up to create that strength of schedule that's a little more even across the state.
Thanks, Trey. I don't want us to get bogged down on this simply because we're not going to do anything today that's going to solve this problem. But I really want to echo what you said, and I think you hit the nail square on the head, is that we spend so much time focusing in different sections of between really not very good and we're leaving people out to dry and ultimately not going to fix it for this next cycle. But John and I are going to commit that we're going to create a subcommittee, start looking at what are we going to do for the next cycle to make sure this doesn't happen again. For Cherry Creek, for a Lyman, and for the not so good on the other end of it. And there are, right, we talked about it, there are weird nuances with you guys being 1A because you can't go down. And there's nuances because you can't go up. And so before we find ourselves in this boat again, John and I will figure out what that looks like in terms of the subcommittee, and we'll start our work now. Because that subcommittee work has to be done, right, in a year. Because we're going to start that process again before you know it. So, gentlemen, thank you. We appreciate you being here. I would also ask, especially Trey and Mike and even of the 4A guys, if you hear of holes out there, I will share it. As I sat in a chair at a 5A high school that was not considered a powerhouse. We were far from a powerhouse, and it was just automatic for 6 years. 6 years we opened with Cherry Creek because that was good for our kids. We weren't going to come out of there because of the way they handled their business. They weren't going to beat us up. We didn't end up with kids hurt. We never got to a point where it was 512-0. They handled their business. They handled it correctly. So if you know of people out there, I would strongly encourage doing what's right for a sister school and stepping up and playing Cherry Creek. So, Jason, thank you. Greg, thank you. Appreciate you guys. Right. Mr. Sullivan, padded camp, sir.
Sure. So the next 2 items that I'll go through here will be some action items that we'll need to kind of discuss and take a vote on here. The first one would be padded camps. So prior to COVID, And included in our bylaws right now, padded camps can occur from Memorial Day to August 1st, once COVID hit, because some of the schools that played in the spring, there was a situation where a second padded camp option became available. Essentially, it would be to start the season a week early, unofficially. The official start of the season would then allow for the second scrimmage, or alternative scrimmage prior to the state. Over the past year and a half, I've received a lot of feedback regarding this second padded camp option. Some of the feedback has been positive, mostly from coaches, and then negative from athletic directors for the most part, simply because there's when camp dates are, and just overall when you can and can't do things. So I'd like to put a proposal forward and have it voted on by our group to remove the second padded camp option. So what this would mean is we would go back to the pre-COVID days or what the bylaws actually indicate right now. So padded camp, whether it be a university or at a local site, could occur. Again, prior to the start of the season, it just so some of the pros for this, everyone would be on the same schedule. It removes any confusion around start dates. I get a lot of phone calls right around that first week of Team A is practicing in full gear right now. I think one of the other pros is right now that it agrees with what our bylaws say. So if the second padded camp option, we want to keep it, we need to change our bylaws, which would need to indicate this, because that's not the way it's written right now. Some of the cons for this, obviously there's some teams that are used to doing the second pad camp option, allows you to roll right into the season where you don't have to restart your pad progression. So it creates just a different situation. I don't know if it's an advantage or not an advantage, but it's just a different situation for them. This may coincide with the next bylaw that we're going to be taking a look at in the addition of a 0 week. But we'll get to that in a second. So I guess the first thing that I would like to discuss here is this padded camp option, either keeping it as is or removing this second option. And again, if we keep the second option, I think we would need to add a bylaw that would allow for this.
With that being said, because I do want to open it up for discussion, it will take a motion, it'll take a second, it will take a positive vote. Fair enough? Everybody's good on that. So, open it up to you guys for discussion.
I completely agree with you about the second week padded camp thing. I'd rather see us go to one consistent model. And if we're going to offer a second padded camp week, then I think we should just all start the week before. I think we should just all start on the same time as boys golf in week 7, if I recall that correctly, week 7 or week 8, whichever way it is in the NFHS calendar, and we'd all start then. And then instead of having this, do you have one padded camp or not? And then you start a week earlier if you don't have it, because it just opens up an opportunity for confusion and an opportunity for misinterpretation of a rule, instead of saying, here's what you get, here's your dates, you can do it here, and you start here. And I think we just make it cut and dried.
Thanks, sir.
As I'll speak for, we do the second padded camp. The one advantage it provides for smaller schools is most of our kids were 3-sport athletes. What it's provided for a lot of the schools out there on the plains is you can break up your summer. Basketball, wrestling, they get, till about midway through July. Then there's a clear cut in between, and then you start football. That being said, like Mike was just saying, if we still had the opportunity to start, if everybody started the week before, I would still be okay with that because then we could kind of keep that schedule. But it does provide for smaller schools where we're not fighting kids going to different camps, all of those things. So that's one for us. Also, if it would take that, like our scheduling, we're playing that second week next year right now. So that we would have to go back, and I don't know if we're just one of those few, but I think there's a scheduling impact as we would be playing that second week. We'd be going to North Fork next year. So I think there's a scheduling issue for some of the smaller schools too.
Like Levi said here, we've been doing the second padded camp as well. Kind of found that it fits well for where we are out here on the plains. Getting to some of those bigger camps sometimes is cost prohibitive for some kids. It gives us an opportunity to kind of, roll in from it. But I kind of, like I said, I think it was a little harder to hear Sean on that one, but or whoever was talking on that in the room. But if we kind of have that consistent start date just moved up overall, that might work as well too. So.
Just starting earlier, a padded camp, or part of this is, are we just saying either, like, we're not gonna start that?
We can look at anything along those lines, but if we change the start of the season, that would also be something that would need to be changed via bylaw.
Is there anything wrong with changing the start of the season? Seems like it gives you more time to practice all that increment protocol.
Safety.
That way you're not trying to have a kid that joins late that's not missing the first game because they don't have all their 9 practices. I mean,
Some states do start that week early, so that's a possibility. I think some of the pushback in starting a week early is there's athletic directors and coaches that are not back in the building yet. So this is bringing them back a week early. So then, all the paperwork and everything else needs to be in a week early. We get pushback sometimes, oh, this is just for football, we doing things just for football, where all the other sports aside from golf, start that.
Good discussion. Other discussion.
I like the idea of wherever it fall. As a football coach, I've went to camps in July and been in states where it's only one camp. And there's no question our kids know it. And we've had it both ways to be right before we start in August, and there's been others we've gone in June. We've done both. We had one at our school where we went to the insurance and then we went to university. Out of that one clear-cut camp, we knew exactly what we could wear, what we can't wear, and progression and acclimatization period. We knew exactly what it was. Every single buddy. Like with the 2, I think that's like John said. I think there's some confusion-ish, I guess, is a better wording. But I see your point completely. Right. That huge farming community, we had a structure of harvest. We knew a lot. We had to stay away from that.
Oh, if there's further discussion, if not,
We would need a motion. We would need a motion. To eliminate that second.
motion by Mike Hughes, second. By Sean Terry. Or was it Greg? Pick it, Sandra.
All right.
Anybody online got some input, making sure that your voices are heard, Trey and Chris?
What was the motion that they put forward? I couldn't hear it.
Eliminate the second padded camp. To go back to pre-COVID days. Clear cut.
I said I personally think I like it, but that's all right. I mean, I'll vote that way. So.
Further discussion? All right, we need to vote. So, all in favor, give a thumbs up, please. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion carries 9-4. That will be part of our committee report moving forward, which will take us into the discussion in terms of 0 week.
So the season of sport bylaw right now says football sports season shall begin the Monday of week 6. First scrimmage date shall be on the Thursday of week 7. First competition shall be on the Thursday of week 8. From the board of directors, we need to make a recommendation for this particular bylaw in allowing the competition to start week 7 rather than week 8.
That is NFHS week 7.
Right, so that would essentially be the old 0 week, the way it used to be written. This would remove the need for a bylaw that was passed last year that allowed certain schools to do a 0 week if they participated in the second padded camp option, which would be gone anyway. In increasing, in starting a week early with the 0 week, what it would do is remove some of the strain on the officials because games could be moved from the middle of the year to the beginning of the year. That would create more Friday night options for teams, and it also take a little bit of strain on the officials and allow them, I guess, an extra week to work and spread out a little bit. Would also allow for a little bit of flexibility in scheduling. We talked about some neighboring states starting a week earlier than we would. Currently, that week would not be an option to play some of those out-of-state opponents. Let's see here. This is supported by the SMAC committee, and talking to some of the doctors in that SMAC committee, they said there's, in their mind, there really is no difference in you're scrimmaging that week or you're playing a game that week. You're still getting the action, and the way some of the leagues are set up, you may get more reps in scrimmage than you would in there are no concerns from the SMAC side of it. So, in looking at this bylaw proposal, did not come up with any cons for this. The committee has cons that we can up, as well as no real foundation. So we would be voting on a recommendation.
Do you mind with this fix the problem we were just talking about?
So we would have 9 practices basically before we could play that first. Yeah, so that would alleviate that. Yes. Thank you.
Is this a scrimmage?
Correct. It would take it.
Now, you could, like, say that us in week 7, we move to 0 week, you put back the foundation game scrimmage. So, we want to have, and we have a week 7, or still do that for foundation. Because that's where the scrimmage rules fit for football, right? You can have it in.
Yeah, there's no special date.
So we could have it, just for clarification, we could have that game week 7. If we had a bye week 8, we could still hold a scrimmage?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? We will need a motion for this recommendation as well. Greg makes the motion. Second?
Second.
Okay, Coach Greibel with the second. Final discussion. All those in favor, give a thumbs up, please. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. 12 in favor, opposed with a thumbs down, please. Motion carries 12-0. Okay. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Mr. Casey, we'll chat a little bit about seating and selection index, and is going to take us through the 20-page algorithm.
I'll let Mike get ready to start talking.
All right, so the Max Preps football ranking situation is more. The Max Preps football rankings are done by an individual who is a mathematician in California. His name is Ned Freeman, runs the ranking, runs CalPreps. Max Preps contracts with him to provide football rankings for their website. Every single other sport that we run rankings for, there is an app developed internally by Max Preps, which they run for their website, and we also run it ourselves for our own sports whenever we need to. As some of you know, I worked at Max Preps for a period of time, and I got to deal with this individual. He is very erratic and threatens multiple times a year to stop providing rankings for them, which is a problem. We, in talking with Sully, we have the opportunity to use the rankings app for football. This would allow us to control them, ensure that we can run them literally whenever we want, because the other issue with these rankings is he will only run them at a set time schedule, which means that if we miss the window at Saturday at 11 whatever, we have to wait until Sunday at 3 o'clock. Whereas with every other sport, we can run them on demand and have them ready to go for our seating. In talking with Sully this season, we wanted to bring to you the option to use the same app that every other sports uses for the Max Preps rankings as part of our seating index. I ran a scenario where we would have used this for seating, so I'll show you the differences. There are differences, of course, but it's not that different. So, find the right one. So, again, I know there's a lot of confusion around Max Preps, primarily because of its, hard to understand. And so here, again, we use strength of schedule, margin of victory, which is capped, wins and losses on the field. It does not, Joe asked this separately, not take in previous year's data into account. It's only this current season. So this is looking at 6-man, and you can see the greens are teams that would have changed. I know this is really small, I'm sorry. Green are teams that would have changed this is their final rank after combining with RPI. So I did run the Max Preps to see what Max Preps is different, but ultimately we wanted to see how the seeding index would have changed. So this is how the seeding index would have changed. So you can see here, Branson Kim would have risen 1 spot. Walsh would have dropped 1 spot. Both of those teams were in the quarterfinals. Otherwise, Pete's moves up 1 spot from 10 to 9. Rickery drops down. This also does not take into account if teams were moved. This is only their final rank in the seeding index. So I wanted to compare apples to apples. Of course, some of these seeds were changed by the seeding committee. So as you can see here, 1s, some 2s, Primero jumps up 1 and 2. There are cases where teams would have made the playoffs differently. Would have been the 16th seed. So here you see Mountain Valley would have been the 16th seed, and I think that would have made Fleming out of the playoffs. I will say, in looking at this, it does seem to pass the quote-unquote eye tests, right? That has a 4 and 5 team making the playoffs as opposed to a 3 and 7 team. Granted, Fleming probably played an outstanding schedule. We don't know how they would have done on the field. I don't know. They might have played on the field. I'm just saying from a eye test that does seem to make sense that a 4 and 5 makes. It's always going to be the case. So here's 8-man. You can see the top 5 seed go unchanged. West Grand would have jumped up 2. A quarterfinalist would have dropped down 1 spot. And of course, the thing to think with this too is just because a quarterfinalist drops down, matchups would have changed, so we don't know necessarily exactly how the bracket would have played out. Here's another instance of a team that I think Fowler might have made the bracket as a league champion. But you know, Front Range Christian 15-16. Here's a bigger difference. Sedgwick County drops down 3. I think this is where you see his system is a little bit more nuanced in terms of strength of schedule, whereas the Max Preps ranking system is not. It's still very good. If I had my way, we would only use Max Preps to seed. And the reason I say that is because when we used to seed volleyball regionals using only Max Preps rankings, we looked at the data, and the Max Preps rankings predicted the winner 97% of the time. It is extremely accurate and has not changed. The formula has not changed since then. Anyway, so you know, we can look at every single class. Ultimately, teams are changing 1 to 2 spots. It's not an extreme difference. I feel that the ability to control when and how and where the data is run is extremely significant, and it allows us, you know, if something were to happen, we wouldn't be left scrambling. Because I have seen situations where states had to delay their seating meetings by up to 12 hours because they were waiting on this individual to run his rankings.
Ryan, when we know that with the seating index, you've got Max Preps and you've got RPI. What we do right now for football, we're using this guy plus RPI. It is still Max Prep football. So one significant thing to consider here is the rankings on Max Prep site would be different than the ones we use in our rankings. Now we will publish the rankings that we use so people can see them. But there absolutely will be parents that be like, we're 4 here on the website, but we're 5 here. We can explain that difference. I'm just, you know, bringing that up. And where will parents go to see?
They'll go to CHSAA.com. Have it up right now. So here's the basketball rankings that I ran on Monday. So the nice thing here too is we can control the game minimums, whereas Max Prep sets them nationally. So we can, right now I just have it set at 2. If you have two games, you're included in the rankings.
So if they go to that.
Yeah, this will show exactly what it is. Yeah.
So we retrain our posts with this.
Yeah, and I do have this linked from the seating index. You know, this isn't live right now, but we do have Max Preps rankings linked here, which go to that same page. It also links here, goes to that same page. When you have your value, you click there, it goes to the same page. So it's hard to miss, but they'll miss it.
Other questions for Ryan?
I'm sure everyone wants to see their class, so I can go through. I don't know. When I worked there, I argued against it. I think a lot of it used to have to do with he provided them with football scores, so it was part of the contract.
And then that his algorithm is different than.
Mm-hmm.
Is one of the big differences that he uses the season before?
He uses 2 weeks before and then by the
Which I like not using the season before. So when would, like the first max preps ranking come out? Cause you would have, obviously have to.
Yeah,
wait a
I mean,
couple
and
weeks.
that's what I'm struggling with right now.
So they can't change it.
What were to happen this past year, if we find that this guy goes?
We're having a discussion about having to use that. Yeah, I was not aware of that. Yeah, that's like a hostage. Almost. Being held captive by this scenario. I mean, so for years, I mean, we had the Packard component of this put in, and we took that out to not have to be subject to something that is such a variable that didn't know. You know, 1 year might just whack up a leave or not a pun, but in the way that this is, you know, working out. I look at this, and that's interesting that you put up this is 2A, right? Or 1A. Yeah, this is 2A. So yeah. Wellington would move up 4 places in this, and then become a host. As you can see, they also went 9-0, so they were 13th in the seeding index. I think again, you know, strength of schedule, of course, but that passes an eye test for me. 9-0 as a, you know, 13 seed is a little low, but granted, I don't know the ins and outs of this every situation, but eye test, that makes sense. Well, now is the discussion that we had based around that. We had a league back, right? Mm-hmm. So that was right. Right. And to me, this brings consistency among all sports. Why are we not using the same max preps ranking for every single sport?
For one, I think it would help, the playoffs 2 seasons ago, our last place league team won 2 games. And got in the playoffs over a 7-win team. Under this, that wouldn't have happened. You know, so, yeah, I mean, it'd be, yeah, cause I know it's really, really close, so that might clean up some stuff. What did you say the big difference between app and space?
I don't have access to his. I don't really know, but his just uses more data points. That's what it is, and I think his are also predictive in the sense that it's almost like Packard, right? Where like Team A is expected to beat Team B 21-6, and they beat them 18-6. That affects their ranking marginally, but that happens at every level across every matchup.
So then this app is less personal bias?
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I don't think that his was I don't think it was him predicting. I think he used that within his algorithm to say like this team is expected to be X better than this team, and they overperformed, underperformed, or performed exactly. And I think that's how his rankings work.
Ryan, is there a point differential in both settings or no?
There is, yes. What is that? We can set it to whatever we want.
So that's the question. That is a good one, I think, and you see this like predictive score, right? And if the predictive score was over 40, and you know, and like what's enough?
So it's always capped at 14, I think. So it's
the max.
Yeah. So it's not like, you know, trying to run teams out of the gym or whatever. It's always capped, and it's not capped at like mercy rule. It's capped at a reasonable number. So you can see here, Chatfield, the biggest difference here is he does not use forfeits. He does not use forfeits. He ignores forfeits.
So explain that.
So if a team forfeits a game, the data is ignored in his algorithm. So it's not like they didn't play. Yeah.
So that leads me to another question. So how would this system work if a forfeit was considered a no contest? That's it. This would be it right here.
No, this system counts forfeits. So I think it's the effect of forfeits versus no forfeits, they're 14. Forfeits are 20. Oh.
Forfeits are 20.
In other words, they dropped.
Right. So I guess it comes back to my component is, so if a school in your league has to face this situation, which did happen, it impacts the entire league in a much more profound way because of your opponent's win percentage and your opponent's winning percentage. Is there a way in this formula where that would not hurt these schools?
I don't think so. I think you have to have a win and a loss or ignore it.
Just for clarification. So it would be a lot easier for us to justify our playoff seeding if we went to the app rather than using arbitrary mathematician in California.
Theoretically, I don't know. I mean,
and the state would control that.
I think that's the biggest part is we would control when and how it's run. Yeah.
The discussion that I have on my express. If we can alleviate that, that would be awesome.
It might help it. I don't know if we'll ever fully get rid of it.
Won't know that
Yeah,
algorithm.
Right. Right.
I do have concern with the forfeit. That's also on the agenda, how to deal with forfeits. Adults will get 2 years in a row without a mountain canceling. And it affects our RPI, affects all that stuff. How do you keep that from?
I think you either have to count them or you don't. And the hard thing is then the team that doesn't forfeit does forfeit isn't penalized for those forfeits. You can't. Same way. You just forfeits count. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no way for the team to have multiple results. It has to be a win and a loss. I mean, or a tie in other sports.
You can't give one team a win. I understand that.
Yeah.
Versus a no contest.
Right. So I mean, that's the question.
Positive or negative because, like Mike was saying, so now you have a win against Battle Mountain, who's 0-8 because they had to forfeit all of their 0-10, they had to forfeit all 10 of the games. So now you have that opponent and opponents counting against you, even though you got a win, it still counts negatively against you. That's my question.
For sure. Yeah. And I do think while we're both dealing with forfeits, that might be a slightly different scenario than a situation where a team was forced to forfeit because of an ineligible player. I think in that situation, I think in the past, maybe in other sports, we've given teams the chance to choose to replace that game, to take a no contest, or to take the forfeit. Sure. Okay. Okay.
So I'm not sure, we can't hear very well with you guys. You're doing with the forfeits and stuff. I know what we decided in 6-man was because we knew there was a point differential within this system that instead of clicking the forfeit button, we just entered in a 45-0 score because we knew there was a point differential in there. So we just went ahead and entered a 45-0 if a team did forfeit. But I don't know how the new system takes forfeit. It's tough for us to hear you guys online.
The discussion was about the teams that forfeit their season and how it has such a negative impact on everybody in the league. And that was a question, if that could be eliminated somehow in this formula.
Other discussion?
Football, sorry.
Well, is that something that would make a difference if we just established that and everyone knew that was the number?
Establish it, whatever you guys feel is good. The only thing that I struggle with, right, is not saying everyone would do this, but if you're, let's say it's 21 and you're up 17 points with the ball, rather than taking a knee, do you go try and score a touchdown? I struggle with that from a sportsmanship standpoint. And I don't know, I mean, yes, we want transparency of what the number is, but we want to avoid that situation, and I don't know how to do both.
Further discussion? Okay, so we're to a point right now where we would need a motion to accept the Max Preps app versus what we're doing now with the NED formula. So we have a motion on the floor by Joe Roscom that we move to the Max Preps app. Second by Josh. Is that where it came from? Okay, so Coach Villapando. Further discussion?
So, let me just ask a couple questions. One, so would we still have the head-to-head factor? So like in this scenario, right, I think it was this 5A. In this scenario, Sully, would Columbine falls down a spot in this situation below Arapahoe, would they flip based on their head-to-head? Okay. They wouldn't. Several of those two Columbine's fourth. What's that? This is the ranking. It's sorted by the order.
They wouldn't be touching.
It would be touching, so therefore that criteria wouldn't come into play.
Ryan, does that new ranking include the RPI?
Yes.
So, okay.
Pine Creek would have been 3 and Columbine 4.
They wouldn't, there's no comment. Well, they didn't play each other, so that, I mean, this would have held.
Columbine would have played it.
Some of us.
Theoretically.
That would be perfect.
You're thinking out loud again, Tracy. Okay, other questions, other discussions before we go to the motion on the floor? We are voting on whether we move to the Max Preps app, away from the NED ranking to the Max Preps app. Ready for the vote? All right, I'm gonna need to see those guys again, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I still struggle with the forfeit. That's the difference. We had one jump 4 spots with the old ranking system versus the new ranking system because of forfeit.
That seems like a bylaw.
Not really.
My question is, the way that forfeits are handled, that's a bylaw question, is it
I
not?
don't think there's anything in the bylaws with how a forfeit is handled.
What I meant is, right now, it's before the season starts.
A bulletin item, that would be. more along the lines of the school can reschedule. I will say this, you know, with, so Olathe and Roaring Fork, dropping prior to the season, those schools had the opportunity, they just couldn't find games. So I don't know if it would have mattered whether it was in season, if we changed it to, if we said in season that you could pick up another game or early. Here's the problem, I think, and Greg and I had this conversation with Battle Mountain last year, and we talked about it, is if you allow a school to pick up a game in season, first thing that goes through your mind is what's gonna happen to my RPI. Okay, so, you know, again, you know, you're just trying to figure out, I hate to say it, but you're trying to figure out the system that would work best for you, whether you're gonna play a game or not. That's where we want to, I wasn't on the committee when it was determined, this item of before the season or after the season, but I'm sure that was the rationale for it.
And I don't even know if it's so much rescheduling the game. We just know that if this team forfeits all their games, it's going to affect the league RPI. So it's just a no contest for everyone, and you have 9 games. It might affect the rest of the. You might not be a rescheduling or trying to play the game of this, play the system, but you just know, like they're going to be 0-9, so or they played 1 game, so it's going to.
I would ask this: if you had a team that was, say, they won their first 2 games, they forfeited 6 games, and we didn't count those forfeits as a loss, and that team would essentially be considered undefeated towards the end of the season. That makes sense. But there's a lot you have to look at scenario-wise, what a forfeit can be. I also think, you know, I understand the effect that it has on teams when a team forfeits for an ineligible player, but if you don't count that, are you penalizing the school then? You know, like what happens to the school? Okay, their RPI hasn't changed, their max preps hasn't changed. Oh, their record is different.
But I think forfeiting 1 game because, or 2 games, whatever it is, because they're playing an ineligible player is completely different than forfeiting an entire season or partway through the season. 2 years ago, Eagle Valley just didn't play their final 2 games. Battle Mountain quit halfway through the season. Last year, they at least did it before the season started. It just creates a lot of issues, and I feel like I don't like using the word punish, but it did have a negative effect on all of the teams in our league because of it changes their record, it changes all of that, whether you like it or not, and you have no control over it. It wasn't anything that you did right or wrong. If I play an eligible player, then I should be punished for that, consequence for that. But when somebody cancels their season on you because they just don't want to play, that, I don't know, it creates different.
I agree. They're totally
And I, there's a lot of things that we're talking about that I'm 100% behind with Ryan. I trust Ryan's kind of blindly with his math. If he says it's good, I trust him.
Come on, man.
I do. I'll be the first to admit it. However, that's my only concern with the difference was with the forfeit piece of it. That's my only concern. The control, all of that stuff, I think that's huge for us. I think it's the right move. I just don't know if that needs to have further discussion.
I'm not quite sure how the NED doesn't factor in forfeits. When we had Sheridan last year, they lost their first 3 games, then forfeited the rest of the season. So if you count those forfeits as no contest, what about the first 3 losses that teams actually played the games? That's, I mean, yeah, it's going to affect everybody the same because they're an 0-10 team. But very rarely is a team 3-0 and then forfeit the rest of the season. They're usually maybe win a game or win 0 games. So unless you're going to wipe off a win off somebody's, like, I'm not even sure how the NED can even factor that in. How do they not use forfeits? But those other 2 contests affected somebody, so that they're being negatively impacted by the fact that they actually played the game. So it's like, it already seems like it doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this, the previous one with, and again, that's only 5A contingent, but you see a 10-0 team who had a team ahead of them, head to head, and their places below them, they go second to fourth in the new system. And that would be based, what's that?
Second to fourth ultimately was seeding, but in terms of the ranking,
Yeah, they went down, okay. Yeah, but then they didn't have the opportunity because it wasn't head to head.
Motion on the floor. So I believe we're ready to call the vote. Okay, the motion is going from the dead to the Max Preps app. All those in favor, thumbs up. I have 12 in favor. All those opposed? No opposed, 2 abstentions. 12:02. The motion carries. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
thank you guys, thank you.
Ryan, you gonna call Ned and tell him?
No, thank you.
I nominate Al Mello to call it. Oh. It's online, he can hear me. I'm not talking behind his back. I'm sure I'll get a text in the next 2 seconds. All right, so where are we at? Are we
We
gonna
are
go-
informational items.
The RPI out of state.
Yeah, if you could real quick, that's.
So initially, one of the reasons we moved to only using surrounding states data in the RPI was because non-max prep states didn't have reliable data, specifically in like baseball, softball, non-football basketball. Max Preps gets 99.5% of football scores nationally, so I don't think it's an issue. I think that would help alleviate a tiny percentage of the Cherry Creek issue by eliminating the doesn't matter who you play, as long as they're a member school of an NFHS association.
But they wouldn't from an
IMG is a weird outlier scenario. We'd have to look into it, but I think they're technically a member of the Florida Association. They just can't compete for the postseason. So I think they would, but we'd look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Good, good. All right, so we are now on to informational items. Varsity time limits. There is a question on, right now we're sort of all over the map. I don't know if we're all over the map or not. We're either playing 10-minute quarters or we're playing 12-minute quarters. Is that correct?
That's what NFHS allows.
Okay. So the question on the table is, do we need to be more in line so we as a state are consistent in terms of our lower level quarter limit? Excuse me, lower level quarter times, time of quarters.
So I guess I can talk a little bit about some things that I've seen. There's some schools maybe in one region of the state that go to another region of the state that may be used, and this is just sub-varsity, that may be used to playing 10-minute quarters, then go and play 12-minute quarters somewhere else. We don't have any language really that says who defines what that time is. It just says what it is. So it puts our officials sometimes in that position because they don't know either. Is it the home team? Does it need to be an agreement, or is it something that we can just set? Hey, lower level time limits will be 10-minute quarters moving forward. Some leagues already have this, but again, we have non-league teams where you have opponents that have. I would like a recommendation from this committee that I can communicate to the CFOA and something that we can use.
And FHS says 10 minutes, right?
Basically says the state can reduce it. Well, you could look at volleyball and say well, they don't play the same amount of games as at sub-varsity as they or in a match.
They don't
You
have to,
can't.
they can play 6 minutes or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's written that way too, 6 or 8 or.
Yeah, can be an agreement. It's the same way with softball and baseball. It can be an agreement. Yeah.
But no more than 2 hours.
Right. There are time limits with baseball and softball. Yeah.
Seems to me like not many 1A, 2As are playing a consistent JV schedule, so I think a recommendation from the 4A, 5A that are consistently playing every Saturday, older kids, because we're gonna already communicate, hey, how does 10 minutes sound? Hey, how about 8 minutes? So we're already gonna communicate that, we know that on the lower end.
I'll speak from a different perspective and John and I have had this conversation, as I have a son that is a freshman, so I got to see both sets of quarters play in Colorado Springs. Do you guys go 10 most of the time? Okay, I think most of Colorado Springs goes 10. And then we went to Denver and had 2 or 3 games where they're playing 12. When you start to think about that, that's an extra 8 minutes. The quality of play at the end of that game for those younger kids is ugly. And it was noticeable, and it was every game we played for the lower levels. So I definitely shared with John that, right, and I don't have a vote on this committee, but my recommendation would be 10 for those lower levels, because I'm not sure some of those freshmen are ready to play a full varsity football game. One man tumble.
10 for freshmen and 12 for JV? Or you feel like it's the same?
It was a JV schedule that he played.
I would add that in our league, many of us have just 2 levels. So we have varsity. Our level 2, we're playing Dakota Ridge or somebody awesome, they'll send the freshman over. And we put our softs and frosh together because of our numbers. And so when they come over to JV, we just pick 12, and a couple of games, we just depend on who they set, who they add for a true freshman group would come and play us, or we're mixed. But we're gonna be mixed. We're not gonna be able to field 3 in my.
For a long time.
In the future. Short time, but. So I don't know if that matters that if we just define it as lower level, JV and freshmen are all 10, it doesn't, because I'll have freshman kids playing 12 minutes then for sure. In our case, I'm not gonna qualify that, that's just not all of it for us, but just something to think about for some of the smaller schools might not have 3 levels of football.
Chris, can I add something here?
Absolutely.
But I also think something JV varsity wise to consider is that are swinging down to point through, right? So you had 12-minute quarters on JV. Now you're talking about, like you said, they can play 2 quarters now if they play varsity, right? So now you're talking about that's 4 more minutes. Something to think about as well.
I know my coaches have discussed this quite a bit. They like the 12-minute because they get 8 more minutes of opportunity to get kids in and give more time on the field. On the men's side of it, a lot of times we play a freshman and JV on the same day, and we don't have lights. We have had an incident where we traveled to play sub-varsity, and there was a discussion between coaches, no, we're only gonna play this number of minutes, and they were even trying to go down to 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so I would like to see us be unified across the state, because then there's no discussion, and it makes it easy. And I believe 10 minutes is more than adequate for freshman JV. I don't think they're ready for I don't know.
So I'd see this very 2 different sides of a coin. For programs that are very good and that have, if you're Cherry Creek, or you are Gnarly, or Ralston Valley, who have large numbers, Chatfield, numbers are growing. They want more time. They need time for their games. And for us, it wouldn't have mattered one way or the other, right? there's got to be some form of mutual consent. I think. I don't want to mandate it down to 10 and then tell someone that's got all these kids that now you're not going to get time, or the time is less, especially if it's running. And some of those JV games can get pretty lopsided, can get pretty lopsided, and then the time is just gone. And I know it's only 2 minutes here or there, but that can really add up in who's playing what.
It'd be 10 minutes with discussion of, unless mutually agreed upon, it can move to 12, like some room, but like, if it's not agreed upon, it's 10 minutes. That seems like the issue.
I mean, we could say, hey, the standard's gonna be 10 minutes, you know, if both coaches agree to 12, but that would need to be an agreement by both coaches. You know.
I keep it one way, we can all have intention, but like with us, I look at roll up football, you know, we essentially have we got freshmen who roll up all, need the reps. So the caveat being able to go to both.
I think we need a standard to default to if an agreement can't be made though between coaches. And again, I think this would help the officials as well. It puts them in a bad position if two coaches don't agree on something, or two schools don't agree.
Do we have a motion?
Sub-varsity, 10-minute default, but if both coaches agree before the game, communicate that to the refs, they could go to 12 minutes.
Second, thank you, sir. Second.
Second by Coach Gravel. Go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? $13 in favor, opposed? Always opposing over there. I know. One opposed. So thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
I've been a part of these before where you just struck a chord, right? I started with, we had several games, especially at Bar Street, had a lot of numbers there. And we would play fifth quarter with our freshman levels, right? Sometimes, if it was agreed upon with our other teams, where we would get those developmental kids an extra quarter at a time. Now, I know with officials, that could be an interesting discussion.
Can I add a thought to this?
Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
So as from the official's point of view, and I really can't hear all the discussions going on. The audio is really pretty bad. Double headers are tough because we're working double headers all the time. So, and I know guys in Denver that are going from one school, working a game at 4 o'clock, going to another school, working a game at 6 o'clock. So if those coaches agree to work 12 minutes the first game, then that's going to put off the second game. You know, the officials aren't going to be there on time. So if it is discussed between coaches, it needs to be done in the beginning of the week where we can let people know that it's going to be a longer game. Just because it's hard on us to get from places to places to work 2 games in one day. And we're doing that a lot. And so the 10-minute quarters I'm thankful for, just because those 2 games back to back, 2 days a week are pretty tough. Thank you.
Thank you for that input, sir.
Matt, can I ask you a question in this regard? I mean, and I know we're setting a standard, and fine with that. If that's the case, that's the case, and we have a voice. But if that's the case, and 2 coaches do agree, how are our officials going to? They're like, no, we're staying at 10. That's the standard.
So I have no problem with coaches agreeing to go 12, as long as we don't have to get to another game right after. So if we're scheduled a game at 4 o'clock in this town at this school, and at 6 o'clock we have another game, but we got to drive 2 miles or 3 miles to the other school, then we're going to possibly be late to the second game. So what I'm asking is if the coaches can agree before, like Monday before the game, if it's a Monday game, agree the Monday before so the officials know and we can kind of assign it accordingly to where we're not putting them back to back and putting the second school in a predicament where they don't have officials and they're worried and they can't get a hold of anybody because they're on the field working the first game. So it just makes this predicament. So it's just about communication, you know, a little bit in advance, because I know a lot of 5A schools, they all want to work 12-minute quarters. And I'm okay with that if we have one game. I have no problem working 12-man. My guys don't have a problem with that. It is just the times when we have back-to-back games at different schools the same day, which becomes an issue with just accommodating everybody just because we're short of officials.
I think that's fair. All right. Good on that. Release date for next cycle, sir.
Some states have specific release dates on when the leagues, essentially are completed. Is this something that we want to do? And if so, when would that be? Some states around here would release basically beginning of January, so prior to the next cycle. We released ours pretty early relative to other states, got some complaints that some people saw them, some people didn't because it was around fall break, so they felt they were behind when scheduling piece. Because when Hunter gone, they requested to have a consistent date everybody's on.
I've had both. Had actual, like, this is a big deal, and I don't want to say it's utter chaos, but it's the game's fair. And I've been in a room where they pull the overhead out, and I've had others where it's released at the exact same time. And it is a little scramble mode, but it's a little exciting for our kids, our community to find out. And two, it's common. It doesn't have the handshakes on their table done before, like, because you might be in the same league. So you can have those conversations with people, but it truly is this when it's released. And like John said, commonality and fairness and not leaving people out to dry. I've seen other states, and I've sent a few to John that they just released, and I thought it was kind of cool. But just thoughts.
So they need a couple times here. So when we did it last time, we took the clock. Gosh, I'd be guessing here, but I thought it was in February.
When will this be voted on final? Is that clock or legislation for the ones that we changed? Like the,
When you say what is voted?
like, so we promoted.
Right, that would be at the.
That, because I had read in here too that the officials wanted to have our schedules completed in February.
That was a request by them. That's something we can push back based on that situation for sure. So basically, we're gonna be doing the league creation next year, probably around this time. So when did we do it last year? Was it around this time? Wasn't it at a legislative council? Thought we did it at legislative council last year.
We did it right afterward.
At last year's legislative council. So I mean, again, it doesn't matter to me, but if we want to get a consistent date, that could be something we take a look at and talk about now when we would release it for next cycle.
So we would probably do it ahead of time, but then, so if we met now, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but the legislative council happens in January, and some of these changes that we're talking about happen, would it make sense to release it first of February?
Right, so what these states would do, if we were to model them, is we could figure it out next year, but it wouldn't be released till the December prior to, or January prior to the next cycle.
I don't know why February 1st is taking my mind, because then it would be after the state council.
So, for example,
Adjustments.
you know,
So we could still do all the work ahead of time, put it all together, but then stuff like this that comes through, we can make those adjustments after the city council. And then other states have different bylaws. Does it make sense to do it after the city council? No. We did it early last time because April. What are your suggestions?
I'm fine with then as well, after that legislative council. I think we need time to research, we need time to look at things. We met a couple times, prior to determining the leagues last time. That's important for us. I mean, we could have held on to the leagues a little bit longer, but we had them created. So our schedule and leagues can be two different things. So, problem is a lot of it gets leaked out anyway, and people know.
Especially when we're getting input.
Right.
So your question, Sully, becomes, do we wait until after we've played both seasons of a cycle before we would release the next game cycle?
Based on our schedule right now, as is written in the bylaws, we would be determining leagues next year at this time.
For the next cycle.
For the next cycle, 26, 28. So the question is, we can determine it when we need to. When would we release it to schools and say, hey, this is final. This is the way it is.
Because you feel that there needs to be an appeal process to replace.
Well, the bylaws.
Yeah, it's hard, in my opinion, it's hard to make a really complete value judgment on 1 year's worth of data. Of how did those leagues work, and how did the ones, when you're taking a half of a sample size. Then you're saying, well, let's make the next 2 years worth of without knowing the data points from the year that just.
Is that a clock issue or a football committee?
That's a great,
Right,
that's right. I mean, I get that. I totally understand that completely. Cause it's a tough question when you're asking. Do you feel like right now we are in a good spot?
We're okay. And we can make it work how it is right now. I guess my question is, let's just say we did everything exactly the same. Could we announce on February 1st, we will be releasing the leagues?
Did the SEC schedule reveal show?
Right. Awesome. So I guess it would just be, do we want to communicate? We would, it's always good to communicate. So is this a situation where we say, hey, we're going to communicate? And if we're good the way we are right now, we don't need to move forward with anything. Just a question that I brought up from some feedback. In all honesty, it doesn't matter. We're still going to do the work. So we can sit on the table. particular day or as soon as we get finished with the work, it doesn't matter to me. I guess my concern would be from an AD coach perspective that's creating the schedules to make sure that they have time to do a schedule. So the schools that are releasing it, or the states that are releasing it right now for next fall, is that enough time? I'm sure you could make it work. We are basically a year ahead of everybody else in releasing everything. I shouldn't say everybody else, some of the states that release it now.
So where do we stand? Are we good with Sully making that decision? You want to make that decision?
I'm fine.
That's a.
I think it's fine how it is also. I just was wondering if, my question was, would it be beneficial to wait till after? Because I agree with you, no matter if we did it now, it's gonna leak, it's gonna get out, and then people start scheduling. So as soon as that first email goes out about scheduling, you better be on it in that first week or else you're behind the 8 ball. So whatever we do, I think, I like it. I think it's fine how it is. Unless legislative council has a major factor in that role, to where it'd be smart for us to do it after that.
In all honesty, we have time next year at this time to rediscuss it if need be, because we won't have it finished at this date next year. So, something we can put off, I guess.
Okay. Marco Hahn from Salida is with us. Wanted to talk a little bit about film exchange. So Marco, can you hear us and can you unmute and see what we got?
I can hear you. How loud am I sounding to y'all?
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Quit screaming at us.
Sorry about that. First, I want to say thank y'all for letting me be here and speak. I'm coming to you just as want to throw a recommendation out, not a mandate, but something that we could put in the bulletin to help guide schools and teams across the state. This is my 13th year here in Colorado, and I've kind of seen it all when it comes to film exchange. While there are some folks I feel like are doing intentional unequal exchanges, I want to just kind of give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they might not know, hey, what's the proper way to film? I know a lot of times some schools, they find the kid that's injured and say, hey, go film this game for us, and that's what you get. So anyway, here are just some recommendations, and I know John Sullivan, he has a copy of recommendations I sent him. He's probably shared with you already. But one, when do you film, or when do you start recording? This year we received a game film. Not one time did we see the ball snapped. And so what I want to, as a recommendation, whenever a huddle breaks, the filmer hits record. When do they stop? After the whistle blown. If there's a penalty, see if they can record that as well. What do we film? I've seen film that's so zoomed out you can't tell if a lineman is pass blocking or run blocking. And what I want to recommend is for folks, we don't want to see what's on your sideline. Actually, for me, I'm looking at your sideline to see what kind of injuries you have or things like that. So what I want to say is zoom in so we can actually see what's going on. Record the deepest running back, record the deepest DB, the highest receiver, the lowest receiver. Zoom in as tight as you can to get everyone that's playing on the field so we can see what's actually going on, personnel, things like that. Also keep in mind, this is film for you to evaluate your own kids. This isn't just film that you exchange. Also, if you can, at the end of after a scoring play, at the end of each quarter, record the scoreboard so we could kind of get an idea of where we're at and what's going on. Something else, just a professional recommendation. One of the things that I see that it irritates the mess out of me is the backdoor film exchange or the backdoor film seeking that happens. This year we had a school, They were asking us for our rye film like every week after we played. I was like, we got to beat those guys. Well, here's the deal. For me, every opponent that we play, I need them to win every single game that they play. So please stop trying to backdoor get film. If you want film of someone, ask them for a film. If do you want more film, ask them for more film. Just be prepared for them to ask you for the equal amount of film back. You want 2 games, they want 2 games. You want 9 games, they want 9 games. Whatever it is, just be prepared to exchange that equally. So anyway, I know that this is stuff that can't actually be like mandated or whatever. I've just seen so many unequal film exchanges that we've done with schools, and I would like to just have something that gives people a guideline to show, hey, here's some things that we need to see on film.
Marco, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If it's the will of the group, Sully can add something, just sort of general basic filming guidelines to the bulletin. Is that something we can do? Marco, if you exchange or you sent that to Sully?
Yep,
So,
I just shared it out with everybody.
take a look at that, give Sully some feedback a little bit. You and I can knock that out.
Sounds good.
I know that a lot of leagues have mandatory phone exchange. For non-league, is there anything that requires phone exchange or can teams do?
I would need to check the bulletin, in all honesty. I know for playoffs, there's something written in there, but I don't know about regular season.
I did have an issue within, they weren't in the same league, it was not a big game, and the team refused to give film. And they asked me for Thursday, of course, and
I can get back to you on that, Craig.
I don't think there is, Greg, if I remember correctly.
I don't think there will be
Okay.
I don't think there is because there's no mandate to video games, to be honest with you. So if a school doesn't video them, would video their own games, would they get in trouble for that? I don't know. Let me see if I can find something in the bulletin. Could you say that again?
So if a visiting team goes and plays, and they have the same requirements or whatever that the home school has, are they allowed?
They should be, yes. The equal facilities. They should not be able to be refused.
It's some districts.
Now, if a district stadium says no, then that's fine. Nobody's using it. I think he.
They ask me for license per game, that they have to. So if you don't have the proper license stuff, one team does, one doesn't.
Right.
The team that doesn't. But if you have all that stuff, they should allow both.
Should be good.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks.
All right. We are now on to the recommendation from the football officials. As Mr. Miller talked about this earlier, that the football officials would like to transition our 4A. Is it for all playoffs or is it for?
All playoff 4A games. Yeah.
For all 4A playoff games to move to a 7-man crew rather than a 5-man crew. A couple things that you need to be aware of, obviously, right? You're going to get a better officiated game if we have 7 officials compared to 5 officials. What's the downfall? I think the only downfall, right, is the financial impact, both in terms of officials' fee as well as travel. So, other discussion on that. How did I do, Mr. Miller?
You did well. And actually, some coaches have said there's more fouls called in 7-man games, and that's actually opposite. We have less fouls called in the 7-man games. And the fees, the game fee would be the only increase in the game. There, we still have the $250 cap on travel, which we try to stick to on those games. So, thank you.
With the shortage of officials, going to a 7-man, would that have an effect on the number of officials available for lower classification playoff games?
So the mindset is that we're slowly trying to get schools used to 7-man. We implemented a few years ago for all championships and semifinal games, and it went over really well. Then 5A came and wanted 7-mans for their playoff games, which we incorporated last year. So we're just kind of progressively moving down the ladder, probably in 4A, 3A possibly. But if any school requests 7-man, we're not going to, if we have officials available, we're not going to deny them if CHSAA gives us a blessing to accommodate that.
But you don't see it having an effect on, just even if we stayed with the 5-man, that wouldn't have an effect on the lower levels?
In the 7-man, in 7-man for playoffs, no.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
We have a big pool that we're choosing from. So,
Great, thank you.
Is there a concern that these officials don't ever work a 7-man crew until playoffs? And being familiar with the proper techniques and stuff?
Yes, there is a concern for that. But it's one of those concerns. It's a calculated risk that we're willing to take to kind of implant that 7-man is what we need to go to, but it's just a slow progression. I would love to have regular season games where I could say, hey, this is a playoff crew. Let's have these guys work a couple of games. It's just not financially okay. We just can't do it. And we're not gonna try to dump that on the schools like, hey, you need to pay for this. We just can't do it. And so what we've done we wrote a manual, we wrote a 5-man manual, and now we have a 7-person manual. We left all of the 5-man as close as possible to the same. So the 2 new officials, the 2 deep wings that we've added, we've put them in spots, for example, on free kick plays. The 5-man mechanic is still exactly the same. We've just added 2 officials in some spots that we need other eyes. And so those 2 officials are the only 2 that are out of place, per se. Everybody else is still, just like the rest of their games all season long, are still in the same spot doing the same thing. We haven't had any huge issues to speak of when it comes to working a game with 7-man versus 5-man. We've made some better calls, got some calls right with mechanics on forward progress and etc., but no real big failures. It's not a huge change going to 7-man for the other 5 guys. So I don't think it's a huge problem, especially with our officials that are working playoff games. Most of them can work almost any position on the field.
Sure. Good explanation as well. Do we have a recommendation on the floor to move our 4A playoff games to 7-man crews rather than 5-man? Coach Greibel with the first, second, Coach Roscom. We'll go straight to the vote if everybody's good. All those in favor? 13 opposed.
4.
Please let the record reflect Mike Hughes finally voted yes.
I did not vote against officials.
Coach Miller, if you could make sure that you let the officials know that Lakewood High School voted to support the officials for once.
I'm not saying anything.
There we go. All right, you guys. I am now at this point in time, I want to introduce the district athletic director from the Poudre School District. Brandon Carlucci is joining us online. Mr. Carlucci, to talk a little bit about a proposal, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. Committee, thanks for the time. I spoke with the football committee a couple weeks ago, just with an idea that we've been kicking around this fall. Had a little momentum around it, particularly as it pertains to 5A football and trying to address the situation of the dominance that's happening at the top. You know, I took that and I'm happy to open that up to the football committee. I don't know, and just even in follow-up conversations with John, it's just kind of clunky. The idea being that we would have an open division, but 8 teams would go up. We don't have 8 elite football teams in Class 5A right now to go up, and so the struggle has been, or the challenge has been, if you're the 7th or 8th team, you're going to go up and get your butt kicked by several touchdowns. If you look at our data, those are 4 touchdown games. So they're not really that close. And so the challenge has been, well, sign me up to be the number 9 team in the state. I'd love to have those 8 teams leave our classification, and then 9 and 10 get to really compete and go for a state championship. That felt weird. So the idea was that those 8 teams would go up, 4 games would be played, and the 4 losers would come back down into the 5A bracket. And then that creates challenges, right? And I will acknowledge, you know, from the get-go, that's strange. We don't have a lot of brackets where when you lose, you're still in it, especially from a team perspective. Volleyball, it still has that playback a little bit. But for the most part, when you lose in our playoff systems in Colorado, you're done. And so going up, playing, and coming back down and still being alive, that felt kind of strange. We kicked around other ideas of maybe only 6 teams going up, 1 and 2 getting the bye. But when that happens, you can't put the timing together so that they finish at the same time without giving that open division multiple weeks off. And so I don't really see a path forward unless there are football committee members that since that time have fallen in love with an idea and kicked it around and have some other ideas. But you know, so it might just die right here and 2 weeks ago, but I'll throw it out there to the committee and get your feedback from what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. But there are significant challenges to this type of an idea moving forward. And ironically enough, we had a new state champion this year. Now, you know, they're a blue blood, but, you know, it wasn't Creek Valor for the 4th time, and it wasn't Creek for the 5th time in a row. So is the problem, is it going to last forever? I don't know. The likely answer to that is no. You know, things will move on. I will say that I think we've reached a point in high school athletics, particularly as it pertains to football. And I'll tell you why. And this is just my opinion on football. There is no club. So high school football is where you get recruited. And if that is the mechanism and the school and the team by which you get recruited, magnet teams are not going away. Kids will flock to these programs because that is where college coaches are flocking. That is not true in other sports. They will get recruited through their clubs. So you don't see the migration to the powerhouse programs in some sports, yes. And Chris would sit there and say, I see it in girls basketball, right? Which is probably fair. And you don't need quite as many to pull off a powerhouse girls basketball team. So you see it somewhat, but it's not the same because I can play on my neighborhood for my neighborhood high school because I'm on a powerhouse club team, and that's where I'm getting recruited. In football, it's all about your high school team. We all know that. There's no such thing as club football. So the magnet programs and the migration to the powerhouses, in my opinion, is not going away. And I wouldn't doubt if it only gets more pronounced over time. You could look at Pomona right now as a great example, right? That was not an organic team. Those were kids following a great program and Jay Madden, who's doing a great job as a coach. And now we see where it is now, right? That was the effect of a coach. And we'll probably see that, you know, maybe Creek comes back to the pack after Dave Logan leaves. Not that those coaches are doing anything wrong. You build a great program. Hey, great. You got kids coming. They want to be a part of your program. I've got no problem with that. It's just a different type of a program. So with that, I'll shut up. I'll kick it over to the football committee and you guys can weigh in with thoughts.
Thoughts or questions for Brandon?
Are you pulling your proposal, Brandon? Are you making a proposal or are you not making a proposal?
I mean, I think ultimately I wanted to hear from the committee, but without support from the football committee, the proposal doesn't, you know, I'm not naive enough. I'm not going to go forward with a proposal that doesn't have the support from the football committee. from our meeting the other day, I didn't, and that's what I called John. I said, John, I don't see this gaining enough support and momentum from the football committee. So that's why I'm asking you all, unless there is overwhelming support for that proposal, I'm not taking it forward.
Not look like there's support, sir. Appreciate the discussion though, and appreciate you bringing it to us. And I know we've had some discussions, and I think it's good discussions to start thinking outside the box. But you know, at this point in time, it does not look like there's support for that.
Did it spark any other thoughts? I guess I would ask for any other feedback on it, which is fine. That's fine if it doesn't have the support.
I'll say that as long as Colorado has open enrollment, it's part of its DNA of education. I think this is always going to be an issue across all levels. Doesn't matter. Not if you could be a small school and you get kids, oh, that's the best school in the football school in the area, so that's where I'm gonna go play football. Oh, they're the best basketball school, like I'm gonna follow that coach. It's gonna happen everywhere. We see it in every single sport. So I don't without doing some sort of Champions League where we're matching historical success of year in and year out, like that's the only way I see it happening. Doesn't matter what classification you are, you move up, you move down based off of your historical win-loss. That's it's just a can of worms that it's hard to solve one problem without a bunch of unintended consequences.
I think Marco did bring, I saw your input. There is obviously, Commissioner Kruger's got a group that's looking at classification. You know, it could help in some ways, but I think there's still some concerns at that top end, especially in 5A. There's no place to go on top of that. So, other comments?
Yeah, I talked to John and a few others at state football, and then I think at state chair too, just about the idea of if we do something like this for this, then what about other sports? So I think that the right path is just like we were talking earlier with Cherry Creek thing. I think like classification. I think that's, and I know that it's a bad word in the room, 6A, but I think you have to start looking, because you got to look at all classifications, not just 5A, and you need to work out from top to bottom. And I think the success model and so forth in some other states that are using to push some teams up will help. But several states I've been in, and I've seen others, the 6A or the top A or whatever isn't always necessary 32, 48, whatever all the other. There's some states that have 16 only. And in Missouri, they're actually talking about adding a 7A to push those 16 up, because there's so many new schools that are opening as 3A, 4A, 5A, and they're making those classifications so big. So you got to push up and down. So that's why they're widening it that way. I think that might be a better way to look than just a true open division, because I think people get upset one way or another. But if you look at that 16 model for whatever it is, and then help look at all classification, I think that might be a better longevity piece, instead of in 2 or 3 years we're in the same boat as we were before.
Right. One other classification clock reminder, depending on how those appeals go, right? We could have some work to do in terms of leagues, and John will reach out to us for any one of those that is approved. John will reach out to those respective committee members to work through that process. Okay. Season review, sir.
Okay, this should be pretty brief. I will be sending out a spring supplement to coaches and ADs. Some of the items we discussed today to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of summer do's and don'ts, schedules for next year, all dates and everything like that. In terms of this year, just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Regarding ejection totals, we had 111 players ejected this year, 8 coaches ejected. That's a small drop from last year where we had 121 kids and 13 coaches. So we're trending slowly in the right direction. 53 of those ejections were for fighting. So if we can reduce that down, and we'll be working with our officials association as well with that. Get those numbers down a little bit. I think our ejection totals will go down, but the efforts of the coaches and athletic directors to keep that down is important. We had some programs drop this year, or play JV only. Battle Mountain, Mitchell, Roaring Fork, Olathe, Flagler dropped totally, Cotopaxi dropped totally. Those all took place before the season. Sheridan dropped after week 3. Pinnacle and Wiley were not able to finish the season. Some good news on this. Battle Mountain, Mitchell, Roaring Fork, Olathe, Flagler, and Cotopaxi, from all communication that I have received, are looking to return to varsity action next year. Sheridan will be playing JV only. Pinnacle will be doing an independent schedule, and Wiley looks to come back as well. We discussed them a little bit earlier. That will be it.
So that will take us to the 2024 dates. You will notice that we start August 12th. Make sure that you're paying attention to those dates. Scrimmage with the work that we've talked about earlier today. Your scrimmage will also be the same as your 0 week for those of you that are choosing to jump to that 0 week. And then championship weekend will be 29-30 November for 6-man through 2A, and December 7th for 3A, 4A, and 5A. As a reminder, we are moving the 3A state championship to CSU Fort Collins, so it will be 3A, 4A, 5A. You know, I can't speak highly enough, and if you want to jump in, or John and I feel the same way about the work that CSU Pueblo has done in partnership with our smaller schools, state championships. If you haven't been down there, wonderful opportunity to go down there this year. They bust their tails for CHSAA and for those communities, and we just can't speak highly enough of the work that they've done. And what a great experience CSU Fort Collins was. Our attendance, we were a little bit concerned there, but it looks like
Roughly the same.
It's about the same. And Gary Ozello with Canvas, and a big, strong supporter of high school athletics and CHSAA. CSU Fort Collins as a whole, nothing short of amazing, and just really rolled out the red carpet for us, and we're super excited. Anything else, sir, before we?
Is that going to be all one day? The 3A?
Got a 1 day right now, yes.
9-1-5?
No, first game would probably either be 10 or 11. So
we're going to be under the lights.
So the last game would be a 6 or 7 o'clock start. So.
Good times. Did you have something, sir?
I know this year it worked out because of the weather, but with championship on the Western Slope, that was pretty incredible. The amount of attendance was huge. Even with buying out the $10,000 and whatever it cost, it still made a huge profit off of that. I understand. Is that something that is discussed about if there's a Western Slope team?
You know, honestly, Greg, I don't feel comfortable discussing it right now with that. We have contracts with CSU and with CSU Pueblo. That was a pretty nuanced situation with travel and stuff like that. And we have contracts for the next 3 or 4 years. I'd have to look. I think if something like that were to happen again, it would be something that our office would discuss further. What it does. Well, and when you're thinking about it,
Other questions, concerns, comments, things of that nature? Motion to adjourn. Mr. Hughes. We are adjourned. You guys, thank you for your work. We will see you around, and I am sure Sully and I will be in contact because we'll have some